There are assassins in the Imperium of Man who can kill with a thought, poison a planet with a whisper, or erase a target from history itself. The Officio Assassinorum breeds killers so perfect they become weapons of the Emperor's divine will. But 10,000 years ago, before the legions walked, before the Thunder Warriors carved unity from Terra's warring tribes, there were simpler times. Times when a killer was just a man with a gun and the will to use it. Times when death was personal, intimate, and absolute. In the dripping darkness of Hive Tertius's sublevels, something from those simpler times is about to wake up, and the 41st Millennium is utterly unprepared for what Old Terra considered a professional. If you crave more tales from the Dark Millennium where ancient legends collide with grim futures, smash that subscribe button. Because in the underhive, only the subscribed survive to hear what happens next. The Emperor protects those who support the channel, and you'll need his protection for where this story goes. The cryopod hissed like a dying breath. 17,000 years of ice sleep ended in a cascade of amber warning runes and the acrid stench of preservation fluid boiling away. The pod had crashed here during the Age of Strife, buried under 3 kilometers of industrial waste and the accumulated filth of a hive city built on top of itself again and again. No records remained of the ship that carried it. No database held the sleeper's name. Just another piece of lost technology in the archaeological nightmare of Hive Tertius's foundations. The figure that emerged was unremarkable by 41st Millennium standards. No power armor, no augmetics, no purity seals or devotional scarring. Just a man in a black tactical suit that predated the Imperium by millennia, made from synthetic weave that armor documentation would call primitive, but which had kept him preserved through the long night of history. His hair was dark, his beard short, and his eyes carried the particular emptiness of someone who had looked at death so many times that death had started looking away first. He stumbled forward, muscles remembering how to move, lungs learning to process air that tasted of rust and recycled sweat. The underhive stretched before him, a cavern of corroded metal and flickering lumens, where the Imperium's lowest dregs scratched out existence in the Emperor's forgotten shadows. A servo skull bobbed nearby, its eye lenses clicking as it focused on him. Not the pod's original companion, those systems had died millennia ago, but a local scavenger unit, probably belonging to whoever had accidentally triggered the pod's emergency revival sequence. The skull was small, painted with gang markers, its lower jaw replaced with a vox grill that chirped binary cant. The man reached out slowly, the servo skull nuzzled against his palm, like it recognized something in him, some ancient programming overlap between Dark Age automation and 41st Millennium necromancy. "Okay," he whispered, his voice ragged from disuse, speaking a dialect of Gothic so archaic it predated Low Gothic entirely. "Okay, we're okay." He wasn't okay. Nothing was okay. But assessment came first. That's what training demanded. Training from an era when Terra had been 100 warring nations instead of one Holy Throne world. The pod's emergency beacon had activated. Someone would come. In the underhive, when something valuable appeared, predators always came. He checked the tactical suit systems through muscle memory. No ammunition. The pod's magazine storage had corroded to rust. No sidearm. No armor plating beyond the suit's basic weave. Just his hands and whatever he could improvise. The servo skull chirped urgently. Footsteps echoed through the sump-level corridor. Heavy boots, multiple contacts, voices calling in the underhive's bastardized cant. A mixture of low Gothic, gang slang, and criminal code that he nevertheless understood on some fundamental level. Predators always sounded the same, regardless of what millennium you woke up in. 5 figures emerged from the shadows, wearing mismatched flak armor and gang colors. Sump dwellers, bottom feeders who scavenged the hive's lowest reaches. The lead ganger had augmetic eyes that glowed red in the darkness, and he carried an auto pistol that looked like it might explode if fired improperly. "Well, well," the ganger said, his Gothic thick with underhive accent. "What's crawled out of the sump? Look at this pretty boy, fresh like he's never breathed shit air before." He gestured with the pistol. "That skull's ours, pod's ours. Everything down here is ours. You're ours." The man with the ancient eyes said nothing. He was calculating distances, angles of attack, threat assessment. The lead ganger's trigger discipline was poor, finger already on the trigger, nervous energy. The one on the left had a combat knife, good steel but poorly maintained. The three in back carried stub revolvers and lengths of chain. "I don't want trouble," the man said carefully, his archaic Gothic making the gangers exchange confused glances. "Don't want trouble," the leader laughed. "Wrong hive, stranger. Wrong Millennium for not wanting trouble." He stepped closer, reaching for the servo skull. "This little beauty's worth 20 throne gelt easy. And that suit you're wearing..." The man moved. 17,000 years of cryo-sleep hadn't erased muscle memory. His hand shot out, grabbed the leader's wrist, twisted with perfect biomechanical efficiency. The auto-pistol discharged into the ceiling as bones snapped. Before the ganger could scream, the man had stripped the weapon and put 3 rounds center mass into the one with the knife. The remaining 3 were still processing what happened when he killed them. 1 shot each. Perfect economy of motion. No wasted movement, no hesitation, no mercy. Just professional execution delivered with the casual perfection of someone who had done this thousands of times before the Emperor had even been born. Silence reclaimed the underhive corridor, 5 bodies cooling on metal grating. Somewhere in the distance, sump water dripped. The servo skull bobbed nervously, processing what it had just witnessed with whatever remained of its human memory engrams. The man checked the autopistol, 9 rounds remaining, poorly maintained but functional, and began stripping ammunition from the corpses with practiced efficiency. When he reached the leader's body, he found a gang marker, a crude tattoo of a skull with red eyes. Beneath it, branded into the flesh, was a name: Rust Vipers. He stood slowly, every instinct screaming that more would come. They always came. The underworld had its rules, its hierarchies, its systems of retribution. He'd learned those rules in another life, on another Terra, in an age where the Continental had enforced order among killers. Looking at the servo skull, he made a decision. In this grim darkness, even legends needed companions. "Stay close," he told it in his ancient tongue. The servo skull chirped affirmative and tucked itself against his shoulder. Somewhere above, in the layers of hive tertius that actually saw daylight, people lived and died in the Emperor's name, never knowing what stirred in the depths below. An ancient killer was awake, armed with 9 bullets and the muscle memory of an era when assassination was an art form. The 41st Millennium was about to remember why Old Terra had been so very good at breeding monsters. The underhive had its own ecosystem, its own brutal economy of violence and survival. 3 levels up from where the cryopod had opened, past the sump processing plants and through corridors choked with industrial refuse, there existed something resembling civilization. The rust market sprawled across a cavern carved from the hive's foundations, a place where stolen goods, illegal augmetics, and untraceable deaths could be purchased by those who knew the right phrases and carried the right markers. The man who had no name in this new age moved through the crowd like a shadow. His tactical suit drew occasional glances, but in the underhive, where every 3rd person wore scavenged armor or jury-rigged augmetics, he was just another oddity in a sea of them. The servo skull bobbed at his shoulder, its presence marking him as someone with at least minimal resources. He needed information, needed to understand what world he'd awakened into. The cryopod's data systems had been corrupted beyond recovery, leaving him with fragmentary memories of a mission that had gone wrong, a ship that had never reached its destination, and the growing certainty that far more time had passed than anyone had intended. The market center was dominated by a structure that didn't quite fit with the surrounding squalor, a building constructed with actual architectural intention rather than desperate improvisation. Its walls were riveted metal, reinforced, with murder holes positioned at tactical intervals. Above the entrance, worked in brass that still held some of its original shine, was a symbol, a balance scale crossed with a knife. The marker made something click in his memory. Not this exact symbol, but the concept it represented. Neutral ground, a place where business was conducted under rules older than nations, older than flags, older perhaps than civilization itself. The criminal underworld had always needed such places. Sanctuaries where contracts were honored and debts had weight. 2 guards flanked the entrance, wearing carapace armor that was actually maintained, carrying shotguns with blessed machine spirits. They watched him approach with the particular alertness of professionals who actually knew how to use their weapons. "I need to speak with whoever runs this establishment," he said, his archaic Gothic making one guard's eyebrow rise. "The broker don't see walk-ins, grandfather," the left guard said, "especially not sumprats who talk like they're reciting from ancient texts." The man reached slowly into his tactical suit and withdrew something he'd taken from the gang leader's body. Not the gang marker, but something else he'd found in a sealed pocket. A coin. Not standard imperial currency, but older, pre-Imperium, with markings that his fingers recognized even if his mind couldn't quite place them. A marker of debt and obligation, somehow preserved through the millennia. Both guards stiffened. The right guard keyed his vox bead, spoke quickly in cant too quiet to hear. A moment later, the reinforced door opened. "The broker will see you," the left guard said, his tone entirely different now. "But the skull stays here." The servo skull chirped protest, but the man nodded. "Wait," he told it, and the skull obediently settled onto a perch beside the guards. Inside, the building transformed. The exterior's industrial brutalism gave way to something approaching elegance. Real wood paneling salvaged from some destroyed noble's quarters, glow globes instead of flickering lumens, air that had been filtered enough to almost smell clean. This was a place where the underhive's elite conducted business, where gang lords and criminal masterminds made deals that shaped the hive's shadow economy. The broker sat behind a desk carved from a single piece of petrified tree, imported from off-world at costs that could feed a hab block for a year. She was old by underhive standards, perhaps 60, with augmetic eyes that glowed soft amber and fingers covered in data rings that marked her as someone who trafficked in information rather than violence. "Sit," she said, gesturing to a chair. Her Gothic was educated, almost noble tier. "You carry something very interesting." He sat, every sense alert for threats, and placed the coin on the desk between them. The broker picked it up with the delicacy of someone handling a relic, which, he supposed, it was. She turned it over, examining both sides, her augmetic eyes focusing and refocusing as she accessed whatever databases her wetware could reach. "Pre-Unity," she whispered. "Pre-Imperium, Dark Age of Technology, or earlier." She looked up at him with new understanding. "You're not from the underhive at all, are you? You're from Old Terra, before the fall, before the Emperor, before everything." "I need to know what year it is," he said simply. "It is the 41st Millennium, the year 9999 M41 by Imperial reckoning." She paused, watching his reaction. "You've been asleep for a very, very long time, stranger. The world you knew is dead. Terra is holy now, seat of the God Emperor. The galaxy burns with war eternal. Mankind stands on the brink, has stood on the brink for 10,000 years." He processed this. 17,000 years, give or take. Everyone he'd known was dust. The world he'd left was mythology. But some things, apparently, persisted. "This coin," he said. "What does it mean here?" The broker smiled thinly. "In the underhive, we remember things the Imperium forgets. The criminal fraternities of Old Terra had their traditions, markers of debt, coins of obligation, places of sanctuary. When the hive cities rose, when the Imperium ground Terra's history into propaganda, those traditions went underground." Literally. She slid the coin back to him. "This is a continental marker, blood marker. It means someone owes you a debt that must be honored, or the entire system collapses. We still honor these, those of us who remember. And you remember. I am the broker. I maintain the Continental's traditions in Hive Tertius. Neutral ground, sacred ground, where business is business and blood has rules." Her expression hardened. "Which brings us to your problem. You killed 5 rust vipers in the sump levels. Their boss, Zavencross, is the gang lord's son, spoiled, vicious, and protected by his father's throne. He'll want you dead for that insult. They tried to take what was mine. Possession is theology down here, stranger. They possessed those sump levels. You were trespassing." She leaned forward. "But continental ground protects you while you're here. The question is, what do you want? Information? Weapons? Passage to another level? That marker you carry is worth considerable favor." He thought carefully. In his old life, information had always been the most valuable commodity. "I need to understand this world, the Imperium, the Hive, the rules, and I need weapons, good ones." The broker nodded. "The weapons I can arrange. We have a sommelier who specializes in armament. But the gang lord won't stop. Zavin was his favorite son, and you made that kill very publicly. Bodies in the sump levels send messages." "What's the message?" "That something dangerous has awakened in the deep places. That the old sump isn't as safe as they thought. That someone is operating in their territory without fear." She smiled without humor. "In the underhive, that kind of message gets you either crowned or crucified. Usually crucified." He stood. "Show me to your weapons dealer." "One more thing," the broker said. "What do I call you? Even ghosts need names down here." He thought of his old life, his old name, the person he'd been before cryosleep and time's long exile. But that person belonged to a dead age. The man standing here, surrounded by the Imperium's brutality and the underhive's darkness, needed to be someone new. "John," he said finally. It was a name, nothing more. Common enough in Old Terra to be meaningless, simple enough to remember. "Call me John." The broker's augmetic eyes gleamed. "Very well, John from Old Terra. Welcome to the 41st Millennium. Try not to die in your first week. We haven't had an interesting corpse in months." The sommelier's vault occupied 3 levels of the underhive that had once been part of a manufactorum, before whatever catastrophe had sealed it off from productive imperial service. Now it served a different purpose, an armory for those who operated beyond the Imperium's laws, where weapons flowed to those with coin and no questions about the Emperor's blessing. John followed the broker through corridors that grew progressively more secure, past checkpoints manned by guards whose augmetics marked them as serious professionals. These weren't underhive gangers playing at violence. These were men who knew warfare, who'd probably served in the Astra Militarum before desertion, or discharge had sent them into the hive's criminal depths. The sommelier himself was waiting in the vault's heart, a broad chamber lined with weapon racks that would have made a guard armory jealous. He was a thin man, elderly, with augmetic arms that ended in precision manipulators instead of hands. His eyes were original flesh, though, and they studied John with the intensity of someone who understood tools of death on a fundamental level. "Broker says you need weapons," the sommelier said, his Gothic cultured, educated. "Says you carry Old Terra markers and move like something from the before times." He gestured at his collection with obvious pride. "I am Corvus. I acquire, maintain, and provide armaments for discerning clients. What exactly are you looking for? John moved through the racks with the careful attention of a professional. Autoguns, reliable but inaccurate beyond 50 meters. Stub revolvers, primitive but maintainable. Bolt pistols, powerful but with ammunition scarcity that made them impractical for extended operations. Las weapons, the Imperium standard, efficient but lacking stopping power against armored targets. His fingers stopped on something that made his muscle memory sing. A pistol, sleek and brutal, with a design aesthetic that predated the Imperium's Baroque excess. The grip fit his hand like it had been waiting 17,000 years for exactly this moment. Auto pistol, Corvus said, noting his interest. Pre-Unity design, probably Dark Age manufacture. Found it in a sealed cache 3 levels down, still in preservation gel. Chambered for 9mm, ancient caliber, but I have ammunition stockpiles. Someone in the Dark Age really liked that particular round. He moved closer, his augmetic fingers pulling the weapon from the rack with reverence. 15-round magazine, double-action trigger, tritium sights that still glow after all these millennia. It's a ghost gun, John. A weapon from your time. John took it, cleared it with practiced efficiency, checked the action. Perfect. The weapon hadn't just been preserved, it had been maintained by someone who understood it. How much? For a continental marker holder? Consider it a professional courtesy. Corvus smiled thinly. Besides, I'm curious to see what an Old Terra killer does with Old Terra tools. The Rust Vipers are already putting bounties on your head. Every 2-credit ganger in 3 sectors knows about the sump-level murders. How much is the bounty? 5,000 throne gelt. Alive, preferably, but Zaven's father will accept proof of death. Corvus moved to another rack, pulled down a tactical harness with magazine pouches. You'll need this and this. A combat knife, monomolecular edge, maintained to perfection. And these. He produced 4 boxes of ammunition, ancient 9mm rounds in sealed containers that had survived the millennia through careful storage and criminal enterprise. John loaded the pistol, chambered a round, safed it, and holstered it in the tactical harness with movements so smooth they seemed choreographed. The knife went to his belt, the ammunition distributed across the pouches with perfect weight balance. Corvus watched with the appreciation of someone witnessing mastery. You move like an Assassinorum operative, but older, cleaner, less ceremony, more efficiency. He paused. What were you, John? Before the long sleep. What did Old Terra make you? I solved problems, John said simply, for people who needed problems solved. A killer, then. A professional. Corvus nodded. The 41st Millennium has plenty of work for your kind. Though I should warn you, violence here operates on scales that would have made Old Terra's wars look like gentlemen's disagreements. The Imperium doesn't do subtle. Everything is excess, brutality, and zealotry dressed in prayer. The bounty, John said, bringing the conversation back. Zaven's father. Tell me about him. The broker, who had remained silent during the weapon selection, stepped forward. Marek Cross, gang lord of the Rust Vipers, controls 4 sectors of the underhive, moves weapons and narcotics with the kind of volume that suggests administratum corruption at multiple levels. He has 300 sworn gangers, another 1,000 who'll fight for pay, and enough firepower to wage war against rival gangs or resist Arbeit sweeps. She paused. He also has friends in the mid-hive, merchants who launder his throne, enforcers who look the other way, even a few minor nobles who enjoy his hospitality. And his son? Zaven was his heir, 23 years old, cruel even by underhive standards, with a taste for torture and a collection of servo skulls taken from people who displeased him. The broker's expression showed no sympathy for the dead. You did the underhive a favor killing him, but favors don't matter to Marek. Only blood matters. Only vengeance. John checked his ammunition count one more time. 60 rounds total, plus the 15 in the weapon. 75 bullets between him and whatever came next. In his old life, he'd once killed 3 men in a bar with a pencil. 75 rounds was generous by comparison. "Where's his base of operations?" John asked. Corvus and the broker exchanged glances. "You're not seriously considering," Corvus began. "Where?" The broker sighed. "Sector 7 Alpha, the old water reclamation facility. He's turned it into a fortress. Reinforced gates, murder corridors, sniper positions. You'd need an army to assault it, or..." She stopped, understanding dawning in her augmetic eyes. "Or one very precise surgical strike from someone who doesn't care about odds. I need building schematics, guard rotations, entrance points." "This is insane," Corvus said. "Even for an Old Terra killer, you're talking about going after a gang lord in his fortress with 75 bullets and a death wish." John looked at him with those empty eyes that had seen death so many times that death had started looking away. "They killed what was mine, tried to take my companion, put a bounty on my head." He chambered a round in the auto pistol, the sound sharp in the vault's confines. "In my time, in my profession, that required a response. Has that changed?" The broker smiled slowly. No, that hasn't changed. The continental rules still apply, even in the 41st millennium. Blood demands blood. Disrespect demands correction." She pulled a data slate from her robes. "I'll get you the information. But understand, once you do this, there's no going back. Every gang in the underhive will know your name. You'll have enemies at every level." "I already have enemies," John said. "I just haven't killed them all yet." Corvus laughed, the sound sharp and genuine. "The 41st millennium is going to eat you alive, John from Old Terra." He gestured at the weapons. "But you'll make it very entertaining before it does. Take the equipment. Consider it an investment in theater." As John left the vault, properly armed for the first time since awakening, the servo skull bobbed excitedly at his shoulder. It had waited patiently at the entrance, and now it chirped binary cant that sounded almost gleeful. The man with the ancient eyes and the new name checked his weapon one last time and moved deeper into the underhive's corridors. Somewhere ahead, in a fortress built from imperial refuse and criminal ambition, a gang lord mourned his son and plotted vengeance. He had no idea that vengeance was already coming for him, dressed in black tactical suit and carrying weapons from an age when killing had been an art form. The 41st millennium was about to receive an education in Old Terra's particular brand of professional courtesy. The sump levels of Hive Tertius existed in perpetual twilight, where the only illumination came from bioluminescent fungi and the occasional flickering lumen that had survived decades of neglect. John moved through this darkness like he'd been born to it, the servo skull providing minimal light from its eye lenses, just enough to navigate without advertising his presence to every threat in the shadows. The data slate the broker had provided contained schematics that were 30 years out of date, but architecture in the underhive changed slowly. The water reclamation facility that Marek Cross had claimed as his fortress still followed the same basic layout, a central processing chamber surrounded by maintenance corridors, with living quarters carved into the surrounding rock, where overseers had once monitored the machinery that kept the hive's lower levels from drowning in their own filth. John had spent 4 hours studying the schematics, cross-referencing them with intelligence the broker's network had provided. Guard rotations, weapon placements, Marek's personal habits, the kind of detailed reconnaissance that turned impossible assaults into merely improbable ones. The fortress entrance was a kill box, a narrow corridor with firing positions at 3 levels, designed to funnel attackers into overlapping fields of fire. 2 guards stood watch at the reinforced gate, wearing flak armor and carrying autoguns with drum magazines. Behind them, John could see the faint outline of a heavy stubber emplacement. Its barrel pointed down the approach corridor. A frontal assault would be suicide, which was why John had no intention of using the front entrance. The water reclamation facility's original purpose meant it connected to the hive's ancient sump processing network. Kilometers of pipe and tunnel that carried wastewater from the upper levels down into the deep processing plants. Most of those tunnels had been sealed or collapsed over the centuries, but the schematics showed one that still connected to the fortress's lower maintenance levels. John found the access point 300 meters from the main entrance, hidden behind a collapsed wall that had been deliberately arranged to look natural. Someone had used this route before, smugglers probably, or previous gang operations before Marek had claimed the territory. The entrance was narrow, barely wide enough for a man to squeeze through, and the tunnel beyond stank of chemicals and decay. The servo skull hesitated at the entrance, its sensors detecting atmospheric toxicity levels that would kill an unprotected human in minutes. But John's tactical suit had been designed for Dark Age operations, and its basic environmental sealing was still functional after 17 millennia. He activated the suit's respirator, feeling ancient mechanisms engage with satisfying precision. "Stay here," he told the servo skull. "If I'm not back in 2 hours, find the broker." The skull chirped protest, but John was already moving into the tunnel. The pipe system was a labyrinth of corroded metal and dripping condensation, where every step echoed with the potential to alert someone to his presence. He moved with careful precision, testing each footfall, controlling his breathing despite the respirator's filters, becoming part of the environment rather than an intruder within it. 15 minutes of careful navigation brought him to a vertical shaft that rose toward the fortress's lower levels. The maintenance ladder was rusted nearly through, each rung a potential failure point. He tested them methodically, distributing his weight, ascending with the patience of someone who understood that speed got you killed, but precision kept you breathing. The shaft opened into a maintenance chamber that hadn't been occupied in decades. Dust covered every surface, and the air tasted of rust and abandonment even through the respirator. But voices echoed from somewhere nearby, conversation in the underhive's criminal cant, casual and relaxed. Guards on patrol, confident in their fortress's security. John drew the auto-pistol and moved toward the voices. The maintenance corridor connected to the fortress's main lower level through a sealed hatch. He positioned himself beside it, listening to the guards on the other side. 2 voices, one complaining about shift rotations, the other bragging about a woman he'd paid for in the rust market. Normal criminal conversation, the universal language of hired guns who were professionals enough to be dangerous, but bored enough to be careless. He opened the hatch with careful precision, the ancient hinges surprisingly silent, and assessed the tactical situation in the heartbeat before they noticed him. 2 gangers, flak armor, adequate coverage, but with gaps at the joints. Auto guns slung casually, not held ready. 20 meters of corridor between his position and theirs, with sight lines that gave him perfect fields of fire and them no cover whatsoever. They turned when they heard the hatch open, hands reaching for weapons with reactions that were good but not good enough. John put 2 rounds in the first ganger's center mass before the man's autogun had cleared his shoulder. The second ganger managed to bring his weapon up, but John had already shifted aim, and the next 2 rounds caught him in the throat and face. Both bodies hit the floor within 3 seconds of each other, the entire engagement executed with the casual efficiency of someone who'd done this thousands of times before the Imperium had even existed. He cleared their weapons, took spare magazines, and dragged the bodies back into the maintenance chamber. The sound of gunfire in the underhive was common enough that 4 shots might not immediately alert anyone, but bodies in corridors definitely sent messages he didn't want sent yet. The fortress interior was a maze of repurposed industrial space. Gang members had carved living quarters into maintenance areas, turned processing chambers into common rooms, and established armories in spaces that had once held filtration equipment. John moved through it like a ghost, using the shadows and architectural blind spots that existed in any structure not designed by true professionals. He killed 6 more guards in the next 20 minutes. Each death was precise, surgical, designed to minimize noise and maximize efficiency. 2 rounds per target, center mass when possible, headshots when armor coverage demanded it. He was down to 43 rounds when he reached the fortress's main processing chamber. Marek Cross held court in what had once been the Reclamation Facility's control center, a raised platform overlooking the chamber floor, where gang members gathered for orders, disputes, and the kind of brutal entertainment that kept underhive criminals loyal. The gang lord himself sat in a throne cobbled together from industrial equipment and scavenged luxury, surrounded by his lieutenants and personal guard. John counted 20 gangers in the chamber, too many for a direct assault with his remaining ammunition, but direct assault had never been the plan. He found the facility's power junction 3 levels above the control center, hidden behind access panels that hadn't been opened in decades. The electrical systems were Dark Age technology, maintained by rote rather than understanding, but the principles were simple enough. He placed shaped charges, improvised from materials Corvus had included in his equipment loadout, at critical junction points. The lights died across the entire fortress with a cascading failure that plunged everything into absolute darkness. In the chaos that followed, John descended into the processing chamber with the patience of a falling shadow. His auto pistol had tritium sights that glowed faintly in the dark, Old Terra technology that didn't rely on power systems or machine spirits. The gangers were shouting, firing blind, creating more confusion than defense. He killed 12 of them in the darkness, each shot placed with perfect precision, each target selected for maximum disruption to their command structure. Lieutenants first, then the heavy weapon operators, then anyone trying to restore order. When emergency lumens finally flickered to life, Marek Cross found himself alone on his throne, surrounded by the bodies of his inner circle, with a man in a black tactical suit standing at the chamber's entrance, holding an ancient pistol that still smoked from recent use. "You killed my son," Marek said, his voice surprisingly calm despite the carnage. "He tried to take what was mine," John replied in his archaic Gothic. "That's how the underhive works. The strong take, the weak die. Then you understand why I'm here." Marek studied him with the attention of someone who'd survived decades in the underhive's brutal hierarchy. "You're not from here. Not from this time. I can see it in how you move, how you fight. Old Terra technique, pre-Imperium killing arts." He stood slowly. "What are you?" "I'm the consequence," John said simply. Marek drew a plasma pistol from his throne's armrest. Expensive, deadly, probably worth more than most underhive gangers earned in a lifetime. "One of us dies here. Maybe both. But I want you to know, killing me won't end this. I have allies, friends, people who will avenge me the way I tried to avenge Zavin." "I know," John said. "That's what I'm counting on." He fired twice. Marek managed to trigger the plasma pistol once, the superheated bolt scorching past John's shoulder and melting a support beam into slag. But the gang lord was already falling, John's bullets having found their mark with the precision of someone who'd spent 17,000 years in cryo-sleep dreaming of perfect shots. The fortress fell silent except for the dripping of water and the distant hum of failing machinery. John reloaded his final magazine, 15 rounds remaining, and walked out through the front entrance, past the bodies of guards who'd tried to stop him and the heavy stubber emplacement that had never fired a shot. The servo skull was waiting where he'd left it, bobbing excitedly when it saw him emerge. "It's done," John told it, holstering his weapon. But he knew it wasn't done. Not really. Marek had been right. Killing him would bring consequences, would draw attention. would make John's name echo through the underhive's criminal networks. In his old life, that would have been a problem. In this new age, in this grim darkness where violence was currency and death was commerce, it was exactly what he needed. The Continental's rules still applied, even 17,000 years later. You respected the markers, you honored the debts, and when someone killed what was yours, you made them understand the cost. The 41st millennium was beginning to learn that some lessons transcended time itself. Word spread through the underhive the way fire spread through Prometheum, fast, hot, and impossible to contain. By the time John returned to the Continental, every gang lord, crime boss, and criminal entrepreneur in 6 sectors knew what had happened at the water reclamation facility. 1 man, 75 bullets, 38 bodies. A gang lord dead in his throne room, his fortress breached through routes his own guards hadn't known existed. The broker was waiting in her office, standing rather than sitting, her augmetic eyes glowing brighter than usual, a sign of elevated processing as her wetware analyzed incoming data streams from across her network. "You've caused quite the disturbance," she said as John entered. "Half the underhive thinks you're an Imperial assassin, the other half thinks you're something worse." She gestured to a chair, but John remained standing, the servo skull settling onto his shoulder. "3 gang lords have already put additional bounties on your head. 15,000 throne gelt combined. Every hired gun, bounty hunter, and desperate fool with a weapon is going to come for you." "Good," John said simply. The broker laughed, the sound sharp and genuine. "Good? You just painted a target on yourself that rivals anything the Inquisition could manage." She pulled up a holo display from her desk, a 3-dimensional map of the underhive with red markers spreading like infection across multiple sectors. "These are confirmed hunter teams already mobilizing, 43 separate groups. Some are solo operators, desperate idiots who think they're faster than you are, but others?" She highlighted several markers. "These are professional crews, former guard veterans, bounty hunters with Arbeits training, mercenary kill teams who've operated across multiple hive cities." John studied the map with the clinical attention of someone assessing a tactical situation. "What about the high table?" The broker's expression shifted to something approaching respect. "You remember, even after 17,000 years, you remember the structure." She minimized the hunter map and brought up something else, a network diagram showing connections between the underhive's major criminal organizations. The high table still exists, in a fashion. 7 crime lords who control the major territories, maintain neutral ground agreements, and enforce the Continental's rules. Marek Cross was one of them. "Then they'll want answers." "They'll want blood," the broker corrected. "You killed a high table member. The rules demand response, even if Marek broke protocol first by putting a bounty on someone carrying a Continental marker." She leaned forward. "They've called a conclave. Tomorrow night, neutral ground at the old Cathedral of Redemption in Sector 9. They want you there to explain yourself. And if I don't attend? They declare you excommunicado. Every Continental resource in the underhive closes to you. Every criminal, every thief, every killer becomes your enemy. You'll have nowhere to hide, nowhere to resupply, no information networks." She paused. "You'd be alone in the most hostile environment in the hive, hunted by thousands, with no support structure." The servo skull chirped nervously at John's shoulder. John checked his auto-pistol, 15 rounds in the current magazine, 2 spare magazines remaining. 45 bullets total. Not enough for thousands of hunters, but enough for whoever came first. "I'll attend the conclave." Wise choice. The broker handed him a data slate. Safe routes to Sector 9, marked in green. Estimated hunter positions in red. You have 18 hours before the conclave begins. Her augmetic eyes studied him carefully. "Tell me something, John from Old Terra. In your time, when you faced impossible odds, how did you survive?" preparation, precision, and accepting that survival meant making the other man die for his cause while I lived for mine. He looked at the hunter positions on the data slate. These teams hunting me, they're doing it for money, for reputation, for someone else's vendetta. None of them are willing to die for it. And you are? John thought about the servo skull at his shoulder, the only companion he'd found in this grim future. Thought about waking up 17,000 years displaced, in a galaxy where everything he'd known had turned to legend or dust. Thought about 5 gangers trying to take what little he had left. I don't plan on dying, he said, but I'm willing to risk it for what matters. That's the difference. The broker smiled thinly. Then I suggest you prepare, John, because between here and Sector 9, every hunter in the underhive is going to test that theory. The first team came for him in the collapsed transit tunnel between Sectors 4 and 5, where ancient mag rail tracks had been buried under 300 years of industrial refuse. 4 hunters, former guard by their movement patterns, carrying laser guns and wearing carapace armor that still bore faded regimental markings. They'd chosen the ambush point well: narrow corridor, limited sight lines, choke points that forced anyone passing through into kill zones. In a fair fight, 4 trained veterans with superior armor and weapons would have crushed a single target with a pistol. John didn't believe in fair fights. He'd spotted their position from 300 meters out, reading the tactical situation from subtle tells, disturbed dust patterns, sight line calculations, the faint electromagnetic signature that carapace armor's power cells emitted. The servo skull's Auspex sensors had helped, its ancient machine spirit somehow interfacing with John's tactical instincts to paint a picture of the ambush before he'd walked into it. He went through the ventilation system instead. The mag rail tunnel's original construction included air circulation ducts, narrow passages designed for maintenance servitors rather than humans. But John had spent hours in the Continental's gym testing his mobility after 17,000 years of cryosleep. His body remembered how to move, how to compress, how to navigate spaces that seemed impossible. He emerged behind their position, in the shadow of a collapsed support beam, with clean shots at all 4 targets. The first hunter died without knowing John was there, 2 rounds to the back of the head where carapace armor didn't protect. The second spun at the sound of gunfire, and John put 3 rounds into his face before the man could raise his laser gun. The third and fourth managed to return fire, las bolts sizzling past John's position and scoring the metal walls, but they were firing blind, panicked, and John was already moving. He dropped the third with 2 chest shots that found the gaps in carapace armor, then closed distance on the fourth with movements so fast they seemed choreographed. The hunter tried to bring his laser gun around for a point-blank shot, but John batted it aside with his free hand and put the autopistol against the man's throat. "Who hired you?" John asked in his archaic Gothic. The hunter's eyes were wide with fear and something else, recognition. "You're him. The ghost from Old Terra. They said you were just a rumor, just sump-level mythology, but you're real. Who hired you?" Syndicate broker in Sector 6. Open contract. 15,000 thrown for proof of death. The hunter swallowed against the pistol barrel. "Please, I have a family in the mid-hive. I was just trying to make coin. I didn't know." John pulled the trigger. The body slumped, and he stood alone in the tunnel surrounded by 4 corpses and the smell of cordite and burned flesh. The servo skull bobbed down from its hiding position, chirping inquiry. "They'll keep coming," John told it, reloading his pistol with one of his 2 remaining magazines. 30 rounds left. Everyone who thinks they're fast enough, everyone who needs the money, everyone who wants the reputation of killing the Old Terra ghost. He started moving again, following the safe route towards Sector 9. Let them come. The second team tried for him in the sump processing station, 3 bounty hunters with specialized equipment, including a combat servitor armed with a heavy bolter. They'd trapped the corridor with frag mines and positioned themselves in elevated firing positions with overlapping fields of fire. John noticed the mines from the disturbed dust patterns and the faint chemical signature his suit's sensors detected. He backtracked, found a maintenance shaft, and came at them from above through the ceiling panels. The servitor died first, 3 carefully placed shots to its cortex housing, dropping it before its heavy bolter could turn the corridor into a killing zone. The bounty hunters died next, picking them off with the precision of someone who'd done rooftop shooting in another life, another age, when targets had been flesh rather than augmented killers in the grim darkness of the far future. 21 rounds remaining. The third attempt came from a solo operator, a young woman with an Arbit's badge on her belt and the lean, hungry look of someone trying to make a name. She'd tracked him through 3 sectors, following movement patterns and ambush sites, reading his tactics the way someone trained in law enforcement would. She almost got him. Would have, if John hadn't seen the reflection of her sniper scope in a puddle of sump water half a second before she fired. He rolled, the round meant for his head scorching past his ear, and returned fire through pure instinct, 2 shots at a target he couldn't see clearly, trusting muscle memory and geometric probability more than sight. Both rounds hit. When he climbed to her position, he found her dying slowly, clutching a photo of a young boy, her son, maybe, or a brother, someone she'd been trying to provide for through the blood money of hunting. "The Emperor protects," she whispered through bloody lips. "Not today," John said, and put a mercy round through her skull. 18 bullets left, and 4 more hunter teams between him and Sector 9. The 41st Millennium was learning what Old Terra had known, that the most dangerous man wasn't the one with the biggest gun or the heaviest armor. It was the one who'd turned killing into an art form and had 17,000 years of cryo-sleep to perfect his technique in dreams. Still with us in the darkness? Hit that like button if this old killer's survival instincts send chills down your spine. The hunt's only just begun, and Sector 9 awaits. The Cathedral of Redemption had been built during the 38th millennium, when an ecclesiarchy missionary had tried to bring the Emperor's light to the underhive's forgotten masses. The effort had lasted 3 years before the preacher was found crucified to his own altar, his congregation scattered or dead, his sacred texts used as kindling by gangers who valued warmth over salvation. But the cathedral remained, a monument to failed faith in a place where faith had never taken root. Now it served as neutral ground for the high table, its defiled halls hosting a different kind of congregation. John approached through the ruins of Sector 9's residential blocks, the servo skull scanning for threats, while he maintained tactical awareness of every shadow, every movement, every potential ambush point. He'd encountered 2 more hunter teams on the route. One he'd avoided entirely by taking a 4-hour detour through hazardous sump levels. The other he'd dispatched with 11 bullets and a combat knife when ammunition conservation became critical. 7 rounds remained in his autopistol. No spare magazines. If the high table decided to kill him rather than negotiate, he'd have exactly 7 chances to fight his way out of a building filled with the underhive's most dangerous criminals. He liked those odds better than talking. The cathedral's entrance was guarded by professional soldiers, not gang members, but actual mercenaries wearing matched armor and carrying weapons maintained to guard standards. They searched him thoroughly, confiscating his auto-pistol, combat knife, and 3 concealed backup weapons he'd acquired from dead hunters. They even took the servo skull, which chirped indignant protest as it was placed in a containment field. "Continental rules," the lead guard said, his Gothic educated and precise. "No weapons on neutral ground during conclave. You get them back when you leave, if you leave." John raised his hands in compliance and walked through the cathedral's massive doors. Inside, the desecration was complete. The Emperor's aquila had been torn from the walls, replaced with the crossed knife and scale symbol of the Continental. Pews had been removed to create an open floor space, and the altar had been converted into a raised platform where 7 figures sat in judgment. The high table of Hive Tertius. John recognized the composition instantly. 7 crime lords representing the major criminal enterprises that controlled the underhive's shadow economy: weapons trafficking, narcotics, flesh trade, information brokerage, smuggling, technical expertise, and enforcement. Each territory, each specialty, each node in the network that kept the criminal underworld functioning while the Imperium looked away or took its cut. The broker stood to one side, neutral observer rather than participant, her augmetic eyes glowing as she recorded everything for the Continental's archives. John of Old Terra, the central figure, spoke. She was massive, not fat, but built on a scale that suggested heavy gravity world origins or extensive augmetic enhancement. Her voice carried the weight of authority earned through decades of survival in an environment that killed the weak and unlucky. You stand accused of killing Marak Cross, member of this high table, in violation of Continental protocols. How do you answer? John studied each member of the table, reading body language, threat assessment, political alignments. 3 of them looked openly hostile, probably Marak's allies or those who saw advantage in his death. 2 seemed neutral, waiting to see how this played out. The remaining 2 watched him with the particular attention of predators recognizing another predator. Marak's son tried to take what was mine, John said, his archaic Gothic making several table members lean forward with interest. Tried to steal my companion, rob me when I had nothing. I responded according to Continental law, blood for blood, disrespect for correction. You killed 5 of his gang members, the woman continued. Then you infiltrated his fortress and murdered him in his throne room, along with 33 others. That goes beyond simple retaliation. He put a bounty on my head, 15,000 thrown. Every hunter in 6 sectors came for me. John gestured at his confiscated weapons on the nearby table. I carried a Continental marker. The broker verified it. That marker grants protection, grants rights. Marak violated those rights. I enforced them. One of the neutral members spoke, an elderly man with augmetic lungs that wheezed with each breath. The marker you carry is 17,000 years old, pre-unity, pre-imperium. Some of us question whether ancient debts still hold weight in the 41st millennium. Then the Continental means nothing, John said flatly. If markers expire, if debts can be ignored because time has passed, then everything you've built here collapses. Every agreement becomes meaningless. Every oath becomes suggestion. He looked at each of them in turn. You know I'm right. That's why you called this conclave, instead of just declaring me excommunicado. You need to know if the old rules still apply. The massive woman smiled slightly. You understand politics for someone who spent 17 millennia in cryo-sleep. Politics don't change. Power, respect, reputation, those are universal constants. You enforce them through violence, or you lose them through weakness. John paused. Marak showed weakness by targeting a marker holder. I showed strength by making him pay for it. Now you decide if strength or weakness guides the high table. One of the hostile members, a thin man covered in gang tattoos, leaned forward. Pretty words from a corpse walking. You've killed 57 people in 3 days. Every bounty hunter in the underhive wants your head. Your Continental marker won't protect you from thousands of killers. It will if you honor it, John said. Declare my actions justified. Recognize that Marak broke Continental law first. Make it known that I operate under your protection. He smiled without humor. or don't, and watch as every criminal with ancient markers decides the High Table's word means nothing. See how long your organization survives when trust dies. Silence filled the cathedral. The High Table members exchanged glances, communicating through decades of partnership and rivalry, calculating angles and advantages. The massive woman spoke again. You present an interesting dilemma, John of Old Terra. If we support you, we admit one of our own violated sacred protocols. If we condemn you, we admit our most fundamental rules can be ignored when convenient. She stood, and John realized she was nearly 3 meters tall, definitely augmetic enhancement. But there is a third option. John tensed, reading the tactical situation. No weapons, 7 rounds confiscated in his pistol, 30 meters to the nearest exit, dozens of guards between him and freedom. We accept your explanation, the woman continued. Marak violated continental law by targeting a marker holder. His death was justified retaliation. However, her voice hardened. You are now excommunicado for a different reason. Not for killing Marak, but for the chaos you've brought to our territories. 57 deaths, hunter teams destroying infrastructure, gang wars erupting as rivals try to claim Marak's territory. You've destabilized 6 sectors in 3 days. The broker stepped forward. Madam Throne, surely. The ruling stands. The woman called Madam Throne interrupted. John of Old Terra, you are hereby declared excommunicado. All continental services are denied. All markers are void. All sanctuary is revoked. You have 1 hour to leave this cathedral before every gun in the underhive is authorized to kill you without violating neutral ground. She gestured dismissively. The High Table has spoken. John looked at the broker, who shook her head slightly. Nothing she could do. Looked at his confiscated weapons on the table. Looked at the guards blocking exits. 1 hour, he said quietly. 1 hour, Madam Throne confirmed. Use it wisely. The Emperor may protect, but the Continental does not. They returned his weapons, all 7 rounds still loaded in the auto pistol, the servo skull chittering angry binary as it rejoined him. John holstered the pistol and walked toward the cathedral's entrance with measured steps, showing neither fear nor hurry. The broker caught him at the door, her voice low. This isn't personal, John. It's political. You forced them to choose between admitting weakness and maintaining stability. They chose stability. I know. You won't survive this. Excommunicado means everyone, every gang, every killer, every desperate fool. And you have 7 bullets. John looked at her with those empty eyes that had seen death so many times that death had started looking away. 7 bullets, 1 hour head start, and every lesson Old Terra taught about surviving when the world wants you dead. He chambered a round in the auto pistol. I've had worse odds. When? John thought about missions from his old life, about contracts that should have killed him but didn't, about the night everything had gone wrong and he'd ended up in cryo-sleep fleeing a world that no longer existed. Thursday, he said simply, and walked out into the underhive's darkness. The servo skull bobbed at his shoulder, and somewhere in the shadows, John could already hear the hunters gathering. Word would spread fast. Excommunicado declared, Continental Protection Void, the Old Terra Ghost Fair game for anyone fast enough and lucky enough. The 41st Millennium thought it had him trapped, cornered, finished. It had no idea that being hunted was when men like John did their best work. The 1 hour countdown had begun, and with it, the most dangerous hunt the underhive had ever witnessed. The first rule of survival when excommunicado was simple. Never go where they expect you to go. The safe routes were death traps now. The bolt holes were compromised. Every contact, every resource, every fragment of sanctuary had just become enemy territory. John had 60 minutes before the cathedral's neutral ground protections expired, and the hunters could legally pursue him, even into this sacred space. He used 45 seconds of that time to memorize the tactical layout of the cathedral's surroundings, marking sightlines and ambush points in his mind with the automatic precision of someone who'd spent a lifetime, or 17,000 years, in cryo-dreams, visualizing kill zones. The servo skull chirped urgently at his shoulder. "I know," John said quietly, moving away from the cathedral into the ruins of Sector 9. "Everywhere is dangerous now. We just have to choose which danger kills us slowest." The underhive's communication networks were faster than any courier could run. Voxcasters crackled with the news. Data streams carried it through every criminal network. Within minutes, every gang member, bounty hunter, and desperate fool with a weapon knew the Old Terra ghost was excommunicado. No rules, no restrictions, no continental protection, infinite bounty to whoever brought proof of death. John could hear the hunters mobilizing, the distant echo of weapons being loaded, the vox chatter of teams coordinating approaches, the subtle shift in the underhive's atmosphere as thousands of predators turned their attention toward a single target. He descended into the sump levels where the air was toxic and the darkness absolute. Most hunters would hesitate before following him here. The environmental hazards alone killed dozens every year, and proper respirators cost more than most underhive criminals could afford. But John's tactical suit was still functional, its ancient filters processing the caustic air with Dark Age efficiency. The servo skull's sensors painted a picture of the environment: collapsed tunnels, pools of industrial runoff, the skeletal remains of previous victims who'd sought refuge in these depths and found only slow death. But it also showed something else, a network of maintenance passages that connected to the hive's water distribution system, routes that would take him 3 sectors away if he could survive the journey. 15 minutes into his 1-hour grace period, the first hunter team entered the sump levels behind him. John heard them before he saw them. The splash of boots in chemical runoff, the wheeze of improvised respirators, the vox chatter of teams trying to coordinate in an environment that scrambled communications. 5 contacts, moving in standard sweep formation, carrying autoguns and wearing flak armor that would offer minimal protection if he got clean shots. But he had 7 bullets, 5 targets. The mathematics of survival had never been crueler. He let them pass his position, a junction between 3 collapsed tunnels where he'd wedged himself into a crawl space barely large enough for his body. The servo skull had powered down its eye lenses, becoming just another piece of debris in the darkness. John controlled his breathing, slowed his heart rate through techniques he'd learned in another age, became part of the environment rather than a target within it. The hunters swept past, focused on the obvious routes, missing the subtle hiding spot that any professional would have checked. They were competent, but not exceptional. Dangerous, but not deadly. The kind of men who killed for money, but hadn't yet learned that the best hunters were the ones who knew when not to pull the trigger. John waited until they were 20 meters past his position, then emerged from the crawl space with movements so smooth they seemed choreographed. He picked up a fragment of rusted metal, a support strut that had corroded free from the tunnel ceiling, and tested its weight. Not a weapon from the 41st Millennium, not something blessed by the machine god or sanctified by the Emperor, just a piece of scrap metal in the hands of someone who understood leverage, force, and the human body's structural vulnerabilities. He caught the rear hunter from behind, the metal strut crashing into the base of the man's skull with precisely calculated force. The hunter dropped without a sound, his respirator torn free, chemical-laden air flooding his lungs. He'd be dead in minutes, even if John did nothing else. The second hunter turned at the sound, autogun coming up, but John was already inside his guard. The strut caught the man's weapon arm, breaking it with a crack that echoed through the tunnel. Before the hunter could scream, John had wrapped an arm around his throat in a chokehold that cut off blood flow to the brain. 10 seconds later, the body went limp. The remaining 3 hunters finally registered the threat, spinning with weapons raised, firing blind into the darkness where their companions had been. Lass bolts and solid rounds scorched through the air, some coming close enough that John felt the heat, but none finding their mark. He'd already moved, using the confusion and their muzzle flashes to map their positions. The servo skull had reactivated, its sensors feeding him tactical data directly into his consciousness through some interface his suit's ancient systems maintained with the Dark Age device. 3 targets, 7 bullets. He couldn't afford to miss. John emerged from cover with the auto pistol raised, his first shot catching a hunter in the face before the man even registered his position. The second hunter managed to return fire, but John was already moving, sidestepping with movements that seemed to anticipate where the bullets would go. His second and third shots hit center mass, dropping the hunter into a pool of chemical runoff. The final hunter did something smart. He ran, turned and sprinted back toward the sump level's entrance, toward safety and reinforcements and the thousands of other killers who wanted John dead. John aimed carefully, compensating for distance and the hunter's erratic movement pattern, and squeezed the trigger once. The hunter fell forward, momentum carrying him 3 more steps before he collapsed. 4 bullets remaining, 53 minutes left of his grace period, and at least 3 more hunter teams converging on the sump levels, drawn by the sound of gunfire like sharks to blood. The servo skull chirped urgent warning. More contacts incoming from multiple directions, including the maintenance passages John had planned to use as escape routes. They were boxing him in, using coordinated tactics and numerical superiority to overcome his skill advantage. John made a decision that would have seemed insane to anyone who didn't understand the psychology of hunters. Instead of running deeper into the sump levels, he went up. The water distribution system connected to the hive's mid-levels through vertical shafts designed for maintenance servitors. The passages were narrow, claustrophobic, and completely exposed. Anyone caught in them would be trapped with nowhere to run if hunters covered the exits, which meant no sane person would try to use them during an active hunt. John climbed. The servo skull followed, its anti-grav systems struggling with the shaft's electromagnetic interference, but managing to keep pace. 300 meters of vertical ascent through a passage barely wide enough for his shoulders, every meter bringing him closer to the mid-hive, where population density increased and hiding became exponentially more difficult. He emerged in a water processing station servicing the mid-hive's industrial sectors. Workers in Imperial jumpsuits stared as he pulled himself from a maintenance hatch that hadn't been opened in decades. But this was Hive Tertius. Strange sights were common enough that they simply returned to their labor after a few curious glances. John checked his chronometer. 28 minutes left. The mid-hive was a different world from the underhive's darkness. Here, actual sunlight filtered through filtration arrays 3 kilometers above. Here, people worked legitimate jobs for the Imperium, paid tithes to the administratum, and pretended the underhive's criminal networks didn't exist even as they bought illegal goods and services through carefully maintained supply chains. Here, an excommunicado declaration from the underhive's high table meant nothing. But that protection would only last until underhive hunters followed him to the mid-levels, which John estimated would take approximately 15 minutes given their coordination and the reward incentive driving them. The servo skull bobbed close, its binary chirping taking on an almost conversational tone. John had started to understand its communication patterns, not through any linguistic knowledge, but through the kind of battlefield rapport that developed between professionals who'd survived danger together. "We need weapons," John told it. "Real weapons, more ammunition, and a place to make a stand that isn't just running until the bullets run out." The servo skull's eye lenses focused on something in the distance, a building with reinforced walls and the distinctive architectural style of mid-hive merchant guilds. Above its entrance, worked in faded bronze, was a symbol John recognized: 3 crossed blades over a coin. A weapons broker, not continental affiliated but independent. The kind of place where anyone with sufficient throne geld could purchase armament without questions about allegiance or imperial documentation. John had no throne geld, but he had something potentially more valuable. He had a reputation that was spreading through the hive like wildfire, and reputation was currency in a place where legends could be bought and sold. He walked toward the weapons broker's establishment with 4 bullets in his pistol and 21 minutes left before every hunter in the underhive could legally kill him without violating sanctuary. The 41st Millennium was about to learn another lesson from Old Terra. The most dangerous moment isn't when a professional is trapped. It's when he decides to stop running and start hunting back. The weapons broker's establishment was called the Iron Covenant, and its proprietor was a man named Hadrian Vex, a former Munitorum quartermaster who deserted during the Third Armageddon War and built a small empire selling armaments to anyone who could meet his prices. His reputation was solid enough that even Arbite's patrols looked the other way, understanding that some economies functioned better in shadows than in the Emperor's light. 2 guards flanked the entrance, wearing carapace armor that bore no regimental markings and carrying hotshot laser guns that suggested Guard special operations backgrounds. They studied John with professional wariness as he approached, their weapons not quite raised but ready to come up in fractions of a second. "We're closed to walk-ins," the left guard said. His Gothic carried an officer's accent, educated, precise, someone who'd commanded men before circumstances had led him to private security work. Especially walk-ins who look like they've been crawling through sump levels. John stopped at exactly the distance where drawing his auto pistol would be suicidal against their superior weapons and positioning. "I need to see Hadrian Vex. Everyone needs to see Hadrian Vex. He has appointments scheduled weeks in advance. Come back with an introduction from someone who matters, or enough throne to make us forget you don't have one. Tell him John from Old Terra wants to discuss business. Tell him I'm the one the entire underhive is hunting. Tell him I have 17 minutes before I'm officially excommunicado in his territory too." John paused. "And tell him I'm offering something more valuable than throne geld." The guards exchanged glances. The right one keyed his vox speed, spoke quietly in cant too low for John to hear clearly. A moment passed, then another. The servo skull at John's shoulder chirped nervous binary, its sensors detecting multiple weapon emplacements, tracking them from concealed positions. The door opened. Hadrian Vex himself stood in the entrance, a broad man in his 50s, with augmetic eyes that glowed a pale blue and arms replaced with precision manipulators designed for weapons assembly. His face bore the scarification marks of a penal legion survivor, someone who'd been given a choice between death and serving the Emperor in the most suicidal units the Guard could devise. "John from Old Terra," Hadrian said, his voice carrying the rough edge of someone who'd shouted orders over artillery fire for too many years. "I've been hearing stories about you for 3 days. They say you killed Marek Cross with Dark Age weapons and tactics that predate the Imperium. They say you're excommunicado from the Continental, with every bounty hunter in 6 sectors trying to collect your head." He smiled without warmth. "They also say you're one of the most efficient killers to wake up in this hive in living memory. Come in. Let's discuss what you think is more valuable than currency." The Iron Covenant's interior was a weapons enthusiast's fever dream. Display cases held everything from standard Imperial armaments to Xenos weapons that would have the Inquisition asking uncomfortable questions. Bolt pistols, plasma guns, melter guns, even what looked like an Eldar shuriken catapult mounted behind reinforced glass with a placard reading, "Display only, not for sale." Hadrian led John to an office that doubled as an armory workbench, where partially disassembled weapons lay in organized chaos across tables built from ammunition crates. He gestured for John to sit, then poured 2 glasses of Amasec from a bottle that bore high Gothic labels suggesting off-world origins. 17 minutes until you're fair game, Hadrian said, pushing a glass toward John. I'm curious what you think I want badly enough to arm you when every gang in the underhive would pay premium throne to know where you are. John didn't touch the Amasec. You were munitorum. You understand logistics, supply chains, and the economics of warfare. Right now, you're a mid-tier broker in a competitive market. You have rivals who sell cheaper, contacts who sell rarer items, and the constant threat of Arbeits raids if you push too far into illegal territory. Accurate assessment doesn't answer my question. I'm offering you reputation, legend, the weapons broker who armed the Old Terra ghost during his excommunicado hunt. John leaned forward. Arm me properly. Give me weapons, ammunition, and armor that let me survive what's coming. In return, every gang member, bounty hunter, and criminal in this hive learns that Hadrian Vex of the Iron Covenant is the man who supplies legends. Hadrian laughed, the sound genuine and harsh. You want me to bet my reputation on your survival? That's an interesting proposal, considering you have 4 bullets and thousands of hunters who want you dead. 4 bullets now, John agreed. But give me proper armament, and those thousands of hunters become an advertisement for your inventory. Every weapon I use gets field tested against the best the underhive can offer. Every piece of armor gets proven in actual combat. Every tactical decision I make demonstrates that your equipment works when it matters most. The former Munitorum officer studied him with those augmetic eyes, processing calculations that went beyond simple profit margins. You're not just trying to survive, you're trying to win, to turn being excommunicado into an advantage. Being hunted means I control where the fights happen, when they happen, how they happen. I just need the tools to execute properly. John gestured at the workshop around them. You have those tools. I have the skill to use them. We both profit if I survive, and you lose nothing if I don't, because dead men don't reveal their suppliers. Hadrian drank his Amasec in one smooth motion, then stood and moved to a wall panel that opened to reveal a secured armory. I like you, John, from Old Terra. You think like someone who's seen actual war rather than just street violence. He began pulling equipment from the armory, a tactical rig, ammunition pouches, grenades. Here's my counter-offer. I give you what you need to survive today. If you live through the week, you work for me. Occasional contracts. Nothing that conflicts with your personal code because I suspect you have one. But jobs that require someone with your particular skill set. And if I refuse, then you walk out of here with your 4 bullets and my best wishes, and we see if Old Terra training is enough against 41st Millennium numbers. Hadrian pulled out a combat shotgun, pump action, brutal, with a barrel that had been lovingly maintained. But I don't think you'll refuse. You're practical. You understand that survival requires compromise. John considered the offer for exactly 3 seconds. Deal, but I choose which contracts. Fair enough. Hadrian handed him the shotgun and 4 boxes of solid slug ammunition. 12 gauge. Nothing fancy, but it'll put down anything without power armor. This, he produced a bandolier of frag grenades. Standard Imperial issue, acquired through channels I won't discuss. And this, a combat vest with ballistic plates. Carapace grade protection. It'll stop most small arms fire, and maybe 1 or 2 last bolts before the plates crack. The servo skull chirped approval as John began loading weapons with the smooth efficiency of someone who'd done this thousands of times across thousands of years. The shotgun's weight was perfect, its balance exactly what muscle memory expected. The grenades clipped into the bandolier with satisfying precision. The vest fit like it had been designed for him. One more thing, Hadrian said, producing John's auto-pistol and placing 3 boxes of 9mm ammunition on the table. You'll want your original weapon. It has sentimental value, and sentiment matters when you're fighting for your life. He paused. 15 minutes until excommunicado goes active in the mid-hive. My suggestion, don't run. Find a place with good sight lines, defensive positions, and limited approach vectors. Make them come to you, and make every approach cost them blood. John loaded the autopistol and holstered it as backup to the shotgun. You have somewhere in mind? 3 blocks from here. Old Administratum building, abandoned after a clerical error, resulted in everyone assigned there being executed for heresy. 7 stories, reinforced construction, only 3 entrances. The local gangers avoid it because they think it's haunted. Hadrian smiled. It's not haunted. It just has excellent fields of fire and structural integrity that would take heavy weapons to breach. You've thought about this. I think about everything in terms of tactical advantage. It's why I'm still alive when most of my regiment died on Armageddon. Hadrian walked John to the door, where his guards stepped aside with new respect. Kill enough of them, John. Make them remember that hunting isn't free. Make them understand that the bounty comes with a price. John stepped out into the mid-hive's filtered sunlight with a combat shotgun, grenades, armor, and enough ammunition to make the next few hours very interesting for anyone hunting him. The servo skull bobbed excitedly at his shoulder, its sensors already mapping routes to the abandoned Administratum building. 12 minutes until the grace period ended. 12 minutes until every killer in the hive could pursue him without restriction. John checked the shotgun's action one more time and started walking toward the building Hadrian had described. He wasn't running anymore, wasn't hiding, wasn't trying to escape the net closing around him. He was choosing his battlefield, and the 41st Millennium was about to learn another Old Terra lesson. The difference between hunting and being hunted was often just a matter of who chose where the fight happened. Behind him, Hadrian Vex watched from the Iron Covenant's entrance and smiled. "Emperor, protect the hunters," he muttered, "because that ghost sure as hell won't." The abandoned Administratum building rose 7 stories above the mid-hive's industrial sector, a monument to bureaucratic excess built during a period when the Imperium had cared enough about record-keeping in the lower hive to construct proper facilities. That care had lasted exactly 14 years before budget cuts and personnel reassignments had left the structure empty. The subsequent heresy trial and mass executions had merely ensured nobody wanted to reclaim it. John circled the building twice before entering, the servo skull mapping structural weaknesses and potential approach vectors. 3 entrances, as Hadrian had promised, main doors facing the primary transit corridor, a service entrance on the eastern exposure, and a cargo loading bay on the ground floor's rear. All 3 could be monitored from elevated positions if he chose his firing points correctly. The building's interior was a time capsule of imperial abandonment. Desks still held data slates whose batteries had died decades ago. Filing cabinets stood open, their contents scattered across floors by scavengers who'd found nothing worth stealing. The walls bore the Emperor's Aquila, alongside motivational scriptures about the virtue of accurate record-keeping and the sin of clerical error. John climbed to the 3rd floor, high enough to provide elevation advantage, low enough to maintain escape routes if the situation deteriorated. He found a corner office that overlooked both the main entrance and the eastern service door, with windows that had been designed for natural light but now served as perfect firing positions. 5 minutes until excommunicado went active. He spent those minutes preparing the battlefield with the methodical precision of someone who'd done this before. Furniture repositioned to create hard cover that would stop small arms fire. Ammunition distributed across multiple locations, so losing one position didn't mean losing all resources. Grenades placed at strategic points for quick access. The shotgun loaded with solid slugs, the auto-pistol holstered as backup, and a mental map of fallback positions if the first defensive line failed. The servo skull positioned itself near the window, its sensors providing early warning of approaching threats. It chirped nervous binary, Not fear exactly, but the machine spirit equivalent of pre-combat tension. "I know," John told it quietly, "but running just means dying tired. Here, we control the terms." His chronometer showed 30 seconds remaining. Below, in the transit corridors and industrial spaces surrounding the building, John could see the hunters gathering. Not rushing in with blind aggression, but moving with the careful coordination of professionals who understood that the bounty didn't matter if you died collecting it. They were setting up perimeter positions, coordinating approaches via Voxcaster, and probably calling for reinforcements from the underhive's deeper levels. John counted at least 40 visible contacts, which meant there were probably 60 more he couldn't see. 20 seconds. He chambered around in the shotgun and settled into firing position behind a reinforced desk that would provide cover from return fire. The window offered perfect sight lines to the main entrance. Anyone approaching would be exposed for approximately 15 meters before reaching the doors. 10 seconds. The servo skull's sensors painted a thermal image of the surrounding area, highlighting heat signatures as they moved into assault positions. Someone down there was running the operation with actual tactical competence, spacing teams properly, maintaining mutually supporting positions, preparing for a coordinated breach rather than a chaotic rush. 5 seconds. John's breathing slowed, his heart rate dropping into the focused calm that preceded violence. This was familiar territory, even after 17,000 years. The weapons changed, the Millennium changed, but the fundamentals of ambush and defense remained constant across all human history. 0. The grace period ended. For approximately 30 seconds, nothing happened. The hunters knew where he was. Smoke from the building's upper floors, where John had started small fires to obscure sight lines, would have given away his general position. But knowledge and action were different things, and nobody wanted to be the first one through a door where an Old Terra killer waited with a shotgun. Then someone, desperate or brave or simply more greedy than smart, made their move. 3 hunters broke from cover and sprinted toward the main entrance with autoguns raised. They were moving in proper fire team formation, one providing covering fire while 2 advanced, then switching roles. Professional technique that would have worked against most opponents. John wasn't most opponents. He let them close to 10 meters from the entrance, then fired. The shotgun's solid slug caught the lead hunter center mass, the impact sending him sprawling backward in a spray of blood and shattered flak armor. John racked the slide and fired again before the other 2 could process what happened. The second hunter took a slug to the face, his head snapping back with terminal force. The third hunter made it to the doorway before John's third shot caught him in the chest, dropping him half in and half out of the entrance. 3 bodies in 5 seconds, 3 fewer hunters, and a message sent to everyone watching. Approaching this building had a price. The return fire came instantly. Las bolts and solid rounds pouring into the 3rd floor windows from a dozen positions simultaneously. John had already moved, rolling away from his firing position as the desk he'd been using for cover was chewed apart by sustained fire. Wood and metal fragments filled the air like shrapnel, and 1 las bolt came close enough to scorch his armor vest. He counted to 5, letting the initial volley expend itself, then moved to a secondary position and returned fire through a different window. 2 shots at exposed hunters who'd gotten too confident during their covering fire. Both hits, both kills. The servo skull chirped urgent warning. Contacts at the service entrance, trying for a flanking approach while he was focused on the main assault. John grabbed 2 grenades from his bandolier and moved with fluid speed toward the eastern exposure. 6 hunters were breaching through the service door when he appeared at the 3rd floor railing overlooking the entrance atrium. They looked up at exactly the wrong moment, saw him standing there with grenades in hand, realized what was about to happen, and tried to scatter. John dropped both grenades with precise calculation, then dove back into cover as the explosions turned the entrance atrium into a killing zone. The blast wave rattled windows and sent debris cascading through the building's lower levels, followed by screams that cut off abruptly. Silence, except for settling dust and the crackle of small fires. John reloaded the shotgun and returned to his primary position. 8 kills in the first 90 seconds. The hunters would be reassessing now, understanding that blind aggression wasn't going to work, calling for heavier weapons or more coordinated tactics. The servo skull's sensors showed thermal signatures pulling back, reorganizing. Smart. They were learning. But learning took time, and time was something John could weaponize. Every minute they spent planning was a minute the 41st Millennium's rumor network spent spreading the story. That the Old Terra ghost was making his stand in an abandoned building, that approaching him cost lives, that the bounty wasn't free money, but paid in blood. He could already see some of the thermal signatures withdrawing entirely. Hunters deciding that 15,000 thrown split 100 ways wasn't worth dying for. But others were moving closer, professional teams who saw the high casualties as proof that the target was valuable rather than dangerous. They were right, of course. He was valuable. But they'd confused value with vulnerability, and that mistake would cost them. The next assault came 20 minutes later. Coordinated breaches at all 3 entrances simultaneously, with covering fire from multiple elevated positions. Proper military tactics executed by people who'd probably served in the Guard. John gave ground, falling back to the 4th floor while laying grenades at choke points and firing carefully aimed shots that dropped hunters advancing through the building's corridors. He killed 11 more in that assault before they withdrew, leaving bodies scattered across 2 floors and their confidence significantly diminished. The pattern repeated throughout the afternoon. Assault, casualties, withdrawal. Each time they learned something new about his tactics. Each time John adapted, using the building's architecture and his ammunition reserves to maximum efficiency. By the time the midhive's artificial day cycle began dimming toward evening, 43 hunters had tried to collect the bounty. 43 hunters had died trying. John sat in a 5th-floor office, reloading weapons while the servo skull kept watch. His armor vest had taken 3 lasbolt hits and was compromised, but still functional. He'd taken a graze wound across his left shoulder, painful, but not debilitating. His ammunition was down to 20 shotgun shells and 37 pistol rounds. Below, in the gathering darkness, the hunters were regrouping, calling for reinforcements, planning something bigger. But John was still alive, still armed, and still sending a message that the 41st Millennium was only beginning to understand. That being excommunicado wasn't a death sentence, if you were willing to make death sentence the hunters instead. The night was coming, and with it, the real test would begin. Comment your theories below. How many hunters can one Old Terra professional stop before the numbers become impossible? The Emperor may not be protecting him, but something older and colder certainly is. Night in the midhive was an artificial construct, lumens dimming to simulate a day cycle that had no connection to the distant sun above the hive's atmospheric shields. But darkness was darkness, and John had always worked better in shadows than in light. The hunters had learned patience during the afternoon's failed assaults. Now they were setting up a proper siege, surrounding the building with overlapping fields of fire and settling in for a war of attrition. They'd brought heavier weapons. He could see autocannon emplacements being assembled 300 meters out, and the thermal signatures suggested at least one heavy bolter team positioning on a nearby rooftop. The servo skull chirped concerned binary, its sensors detecting the weapons buildup with something approaching alarm. "I know," John said, checking his ammunition count again. 20 shotgun shells, 37 pistol rounds, 4 grenades, against hundreds of hunters and weapons that could reduce the building to rubble. The mathematics of survival had stopped being theoretical and become brutally practical. He needed to change the equation. The building's blueprints, accessed through a data terminal that still functioned after decades of abandonment, showed something interesting: a maintenance tunnel system connecting to the mid-hive's industrial coolant network. The tunnels had been sealed after the heresy trials, officially to prevent looting, but John suspected the real reason was to keep people from discovering what had actually happened to the executed administratum workers. The sealed entrance was in the basement, behind a wall that had been hastily bricked over with rockcrete. John studied it for 30 seconds, then placed his last breaching charge, a shaped explosive Hadrian had included in the equipment package, against the weakest structural point. The explosion echoed through the building's lower levels, and John was through the opening before the dust settled. The servo skull followed, its eye lenses cutting through the darkness to reveal a tunnel system that stretched in 4 directions like arteries through the hive's infrastructure. Behind them, he could hear the hunters reacting to the explosion, vox chatter increasing, assault teams mobilizing, someone shouting orders about sealing potential escape routes. They thought he was running, trying to flee through the tunnels while they'd been setting up their siege. They were half right. John moved through the tunnels with purpose, the servo skull's sensors mapping the network and correlating it with the mid-hive's layout. 300 meters through passages that stank of coolant and industrial chemicals brought him to another sealed entrance. This one opened into the basement of a hab block that housed workers from the nearby manufactorums, hundreds of Imperial citizens living in the cramped quarters that the hive's middle class called home. He didn't breach this entrance. Instead, he climbed through a maintenance shaft that ran parallel to the tunnel, emerging in a ventilation system that served the hab block's upper levels. From here, he could access the rooftop where the heavy bolter team had positioned themselves. The 2-man crew never heard him coming. They were focused on the administratum building 300 meters away, waiting for orders to reduce it to rubble with sustained fire. Professional setup, the gunner behind the weapon, the spotter calling ranges and corrections, both wearing flak armor and carrying vox beads that kept them connected to the siege command structure. John looked at him with those empty eyes that had seen death so many times that death had started looking away. They killed what was mine, tried to take my companion, put a bounty on my head. He chambered around in the auto pistol, the sound sharp in the vault's confines. In my time, in my profession, that required a response. Has that changed? The broker smiled slowly. No, that hasn't changed. The continental rules still apply, even in the 41st millennium. Blood demands blood. Disrespect demands correction. She pulled a data slate from her robes. I'll get you the information. But understand, once you do this, there's no going back. Every gang in the underhive will know your name. You'll have enemies at every level. I already have enemies, John said. I just haven't killed them all yet. Corvus laughed, the sound sharp and genuine. The 41st millennium is going to eat you alive, John from Old Terra. He gestured at the weapons, but you'll make it very entertaining before it does. Take the equipment. Consider it an investment in theater. As John left the vault, properly armed for the first time since awakening, the servo skull bobbed excitedly at his shoulder. It had waited patiently at the entrance, and now it chirped binary cant that sounded almost gleeful. The man with the ancient eyes and the new name checked his weapon one last time and moved deeper into the underhive's corridors. Somewhere ahead, in a fortress built from imperial refuse and criminal ambition, a gang lord mourned his son and plotted vengeance. He had no idea that vengeance was already coming for him, dressed in black tactical suit and carrying weapons from an age when killing had been an art form. The 41st millennium was about to receive an education in Old Terra's particular brand of professional courtesy. The sump levels of Hive Tertius existed in perpetual twilight, where the only illumination came from bioluminescent fungi and the occasional flickering lumen that had survived decades of neglect. John moved through this darkness like he'd been born to it, the servo skull providing minimal light from its eye lenses. just enough to navigate without advertising his presence to every threat in the shadows. The data slate the broker had provided contained schematics that were 30 years out of date, but architecture in the underhive changed slowly. The water reclamation facility that Marek Cross had claimed as his fortress still followed the same basic layout, a central processing chamber surrounded by maintenance corridors, with living quarters carved into the surrounding rock, where overseers had once monitored the machinery that kept the hive's lower levels from drowning in their own filth. John had spent 4 hours studying the schematics, cross-referencing them with intelligence the broker's network had provided. Guard rotations, weapon placements, Marek's personal habits, the kind of detailed reconnaissance that turned impossible assaults into merely improbable ones. The fortress entrance was a kill box, a narrow corridor with firing positions at 3 levels, designed to funnel attackers into overlapping fields of fire. 2 guards stood watch at the reinforced gate, wearing flak armor and carrying autoguns with drum magazines. Behind them, John could see the faint outline of a heavy stubber emplacement, its barrel pointed down the approach corridor. A frontal assault would be suicide, which was why John had no intention of using the front entrance. The water reclamation facility's original purpose meant it connected to the hive's ancient sump processing network, kilometers of pipe and tunnel that carried wastewater from the upper levels down into the deep processing plants. Most of those tunnels had been sealed or collapsed over the centuries, but the schematics showed one that still connected to the fortress's lower maintenance levels. John found the access point 300 meters from the main entrance, hidden behind a collapsed wall that had been deliberately arranged to look natural. Someone had used this route before, smugglers probably, or previous gang operations before Marek had claimed the territory. The entrance was narrow, barely wide enough for a man to squeeze through, and the tunnel beyond stank of chemicals and decay. The servo skull hesitated at the entrance, its sensors detecting atmospheric toxicity levels that would kill an unprotected human in minutes. But John's tactical suit had been designed for Dark Age operations, and its basic environmental sealing was still functional after 17 millennia. He activated the suit's respirator, feeling ancient mechanisms engage with satisfying precision. "Stay here," he told the servo skull. "If I'm not back in 2 hours, find the broker." The skull chirped protest, but John was already moving into the tunnel. The pipe system was a labyrinth of corroded metal and dripping condensation, where every step echoed with the potential to alert someone to his presence. He moved with careful precision, testing each footfall, controlling his breathing despite the respirator's filters, becoming part of the environment rather than an intruder within it. 15 minutes of careful navigation brought him to a vertical shaft that rose toward the fortress's lower levels. The maintenance ladder was rusted nearly through, each rung a potential failure point. He tested them methodically, distributing his weight, ascending with the patience of someone who understood that speed got you killed, but precision kept you breathing. The shaft opened into a maintenance chamber that hadn't been occupied in decades. Dust covered every surface, and the air tasted of rust and abandonment even through the respirator. But voices echoed from somewhere nearby, conversation in the underhive's criminal cant, casual and relaxed. Guards on patrol, confident in their fortress's security. John drew the auto-pistol and moved toward the voices. The maintenance corridor connected to the fortress's main lower level through a sealed hatch. He positioned himself beside it, listening to the guards on the other side. 2 voices, one complaining about shift rotations, the other bragging about a woman he'd paid for in the rust market. Normal criminal conversation, the universal language of hired guns who were professionals enough to be dangerous, but bored enough to be careless. He opened the hatch with careful precision, the ancient hinges surprisingly silent, and assessed the tactical situation in the heartbeat before they noticed him. 2 gangers, flak armor, adequate coverage, but with gaps at the joints. Autoguns slung casually, not held ready. 20 meters of corridor between his position and theirs, with sight lines that gave him perfect fields of fire and them no cover whatsoever. They turned when they heard the hatch open, hands reaching for weapons with reactions that were good but not good enough. John put 2 rounds in the first ganger's center mass before the man's autogun had cleared his shoulder. The second ganger managed to bring his weapon up, but John had already shifted aim, and the next 2 rounds caught him in the throat and face. Both bodies hit the floor within 3 seconds of each other, the entire engagement executed with the casual efficiency of someone who'd done this thousands of times before the Imperium had even existed. He cleared their weapons, took spare magazines, and dragged the bodies back into the maintenance chamber. The sound of gunfire in the underhive was common enough that 4 shots might not immediately alert anyone, but bodies in corridors definitely sent messages he didn't want sent yet. The fortress interior was a maze of repurposed industrial space. Gang members had carved living quarters into maintenance areas, turned processing chambers into common rooms, and established armories in spaces that had once held filtration equipment. John moved through it like a ghost, using the shadows and architectural blind spots that existed in any structure not designed by true professionals. He killed 6 more guards in the next 20 minutes. Each death was precise, surgical, designed to minimize noise and maximize efficiency. 2 rounds per target, center mass when possible, headshots when armor coverage demanded it. He was down to 43 rounds when he reached the fortress's main processing chamber. Marek Cross held court in what had once been the Reclamation Facility's control center, a raised platform overlooking the chamber floor, where gang members gathered for orders, disputes, and the kind of brutal entertainment that kept underhive criminals loyal. The gang lord himself sat in a throne cobbled together from industrial equipment and scavenged luxury, surrounded by his lieutenants and personal guard. John counted 20 gangers in the chamber, too many for a direct assault with his remaining ammunition, but direct assault had never been the plan. He found the facility's power junction 3 levels above the control center, hidden behind access panels that hadn't been opened in decades. The electrical systems were Dark Age technology, maintained by rote rather than understanding, but the principles were simple enough. He placed shaped charges, improvised from materials Corvus had included in his equipment loadout, at critical junction points. The lights died across the entire fortress with a cascading failure that plunged everything into absolute darkness. In the chaos that followed, John descended into the processing chamber with the patience of a falling shadow. His auto pistol had tritium sights that glowed faintly in the dark, Old Terra technology that didn't rely on power systems or machine spirits. The gangers were shouting, firing blind, creating more confusion than defense. He killed 12 of them in the darkness, each shot placed with perfect precision, each target selected for maximum disruption to their command structure. Lieutenants first, then the heavy weapon operators, then anyone trying to restore order. When emergency lumens finally flickered to life, Marek Cross found himself alone on his throne, surrounded by the bodies of his inner circle, with a man in a black tactical suit standing at the chamber's entrance, holding an ancient pistol that still smoked from recent use. "You killed my son," Marek said, his voice surprisingly calm despite the carnage. "He tried to take what was mine," John replied in his archaic Gothic. "That's how the underhive works. The strong take, the weak die. Then you understand why I'm here." Marek studied him with the attention of someone who'd survived decades in the underhive's brutal hierarchy. "You're not from here. Not from this time. I can see it in how you move, how you fight. Old Terra technique, pre-Imperium killing arts." He stood slowly. "What are you?" "I'm the consequence," John said simply. Marek drew a plasma pistol from his throne's armrest. Expensive, deadly, probably worth more than most underhive gangers earned in a lifetime. "One of us dies here. Maybe both. But I want you to know, killing me won't end this. I have allies, friends, People who will avenge me the way I tried to avenge Zavin. I know, John said. That's what I'm counting on. He fired twice. Marek managed to trigger the plasma pistol once, the superheated bolt scorching past John's shoulder and melting a support beam into slag. But the gang lord was already falling, John's bullets having found their mark with the precision of someone who'd spent 17,000 years in cryo-sleep dreaming of perfect shots. The fortress fell silent except for the dripping of water and the distant hum of failing machinery. John reloaded his final magazine, 15 rounds remaining, and walked out through the front entrance, past the bodies of guards who'd tried to stop him and the heavy stubber emplacement that had never fired a shot. The servo skull was waiting where he'd left it, bobbing excitedly when it saw him emerge. "It's done," John told it, holstering his weapon. But he knew it wasn't done. Not really. Marek had been right. Killing him would bring consequences, would draw attention, would make John's name echo through the underhive's criminal networks. In his old life, that would have been a problem. In this new age, in this grim darkness where violence was currency and death was commerce, it was exactly what he needed. The Continental's rules still applied, even 17,000 years later. You respected the markers, you honored the debts, and when someone killed what was yours, you made them understand the cost. The 41st Millennium was beginning to learn that some lessons transcended time itself. Word spread through the underhive the way fire spread through Prometheum, fast, hot, and impossible to contain. By the time John returned to the Continental, every gang lord, crime boss, and criminal entrepreneur in 6 sectors knew what had happened at the water reclamation facility. 1 man, 75 bullets, 38 bodies. A gang lord dead in his throne room, his fortress breached through routes his own guards hadn't known existed. The broker was waiting in her office, standing rather than sitting, her augmetic eyes glowing brighter than usual, a sign of elevated processing as her wetware analyzed incoming data streams from across her network. "You've caused quite the disturbance," she said as John entered. "Half the underhive thinks you're an Imperial assassin, the other half thinks you're something worse." She gestured to a chair, but John remained standing, the servo skull settling onto his shoulder. "3 gang lords have already put additional bounties on your head. 15,000 throne gelt combined. Every hired gun, bounty hunter, and desperate fool with a weapon is going to come for you." "Good," John said simply. The broker laughed, the sound sharp and genuine. "Good? You just painted a target on yourself that rivals anything the Inquisition could manage." She pulled up a holo display from her desk, a 3-dimensional map of the underhive with red markers spreading like infection across multiple sectors. "These are confirmed hunter teams already mobilizing, 43 separate groups. Some are solo operators, desperate idiots who think they're faster than you are. But others?" She highlighted several markers. "These are professional crews, former guard veterans, bounty hunters with Arbeits training, mercenary kill teams who've operated across multiple hive cities." John studied the map with the clinical attention of someone assessing a tactical situation. "What about the high table?" The broker's expression shifted to something approaching respect. "You remember, even after 17,000 years, you remember the structure." She minimized the hunter map and brought up something else, a network diagram showing connections between the underhive's major criminal organizations. The high table still exists, in a fashion. 7 crime lords who control the major territories, maintain neutral ground agreements, and enforce the Continental's rules. Marek Cross was one of them. "Then they'll want answers." "They'll want blood," the broker corrected. "You killed a high table member. The rules demand response, even if Marek broke protocol first by putting a bounty on someone carrying a Continental marker." She leaned forward. "They've called a conclave. Tomorrow night, neutral ground at the old Cathedral of Redemption in Sector 9. They want you there to explain yourself. And if I don't attend?" They declare you excommunicado. Every continental resource in the underhive closes to you. Every criminal, every thief, every killer becomes your enemy. You'll have nowhere to hide, nowhere to resupply, no information networks. She paused. You'd be alone in the most hostile environment in the hive, hunted by thousands, with no support structure. The servo skull chirped nervously at John's shoulder. John checked his auto-pistol, 15 rounds in the current magazine, 2 spare magazines remaining, 45 bullets total. Not enough for thousands of hunters, but enough for whoever came first. I'll attend the conclave. Wise choice. The broker handed him a data slate. Safe routes to Sector 9, marked in green. Estimated hunter positions in red. You have 18 hours before the conclave begins. Her augmetic eyes studied him carefully. Tell me something, John from Old Terra. In your time, when you faced impossible odds, how did you survive? Preparation, precision, and accepting that survival meant making the other man die for his cause while I lived for mine. He looked at the hunter positions on the data slate. These teams hunting me, they're doing it for money, for reputation, for someone else's vendetta. None of them are willing to die for it. And you are? John thought about the servo skull at his shoulder, the only companion he'd found in this grim future. Thought about waking up 17,000 years displaced, in a galaxy where everything he'd known had turned to legend or dust. Thought about 5 gangers trying to take what little he had left. I don't plan on dying, he said, but I'm willing to risk it for what matters. That's the difference. The broker smiled thinly. Then I suggest you prepare, John, because between here and Sector 9, every hunter in the underhive is going to test that theory. The first team came for him in the collapsed transit tunnel between Sectors 4 and 5, where ancient mag rail tracks had been buried under 300 years of industrial refuse. 4 hunters, former guard by their movement patterns, carrying laser guns and wearing carapace armor that still bore faded regimental markings. They'd chosen the ambush point well. Narrow corridor, limited sight lines, choke points that forced anyone passing through into kill zones. In a fair fight, 4 trained veterans with superior armor and weapons would have crushed a single target with a pistol. John didn't believe in fair fights. He'd spotted their position from 300 meters out, reading the tactical situation from subtle tells, disturbed dust patterns, sight line calculations, the faint electromagnetic signature that carapace armor's power cells emitted. The servo skull's Auspex sensors had helped, its ancient machine spirit somehow interfacing with John's tactical instincts to paint a picture of the ambush before he'd walked into it. He went through the ventilation system instead. The mag rail tunnel's original construction included air circulation ducts, narrow passages designed for maintenance servitors rather than humans. But John had spent hours in the Continental's gym testing his mobility after 17,000 years of cryosleep. His body remembered how to move, how to compress, how to navigate spaces that seemed impossible. He emerged behind their position, in the shadow of a collapsed support beam, with clean shots at all 4 targets. The first hunter died without knowing John was there, 2 rounds to the back of the head where carapace armor didn't protect. The second spun at the sound of gunfire, and John put 3 rounds into his face before the man could raise his laser gun. The third and fourth managed to return fire, las bolts sizzling past John's position and scoring the metal walls, but they were firing blind, panicked, and John was already moving. He dropped the third with 2 chest shots that found the gaps in carapace armor, then closed distance on the fourth with movements so fast they seemed choreographed. The hunter tried to bring his laser gun around for a point-blank shot, but John batted it aside with his free hand and put the auto-pistol against the man's throat. "Who hired you?" John asked in his archaic Gothic. The hunter's eyes were wide with fear and something else, recognition. "You're him. The ghost from Old Terra. They said you were just a rumor, just sump-level mythology, but you're real. Who hired you? Syndicate broker in Sector 6. Open contract. 15,000 thrown for proof of death. The hunter swallowed against the pistol barrel. Please, I have a family in the mid-hive. I was just trying to make coin. I didn't know. John pulled the trigger. The body slumped, and he stood alone in the tunnel surrounded by 4 corpses and the smell of cordite and burned flesh. The servo skull bobbed down from its hiding position, chirping inquiry. They'll keep coming, John told it, reloading his pistol with one of his 2 remaining magazines. 30 rounds left. Everyone who thinks they're fast enough, everyone who needs the money, everyone who wants the reputation of killing the Old Terra ghost. He started moving again, following the safe route towards Sector 9. Let them come. The second team tried for him in the sump processing station, 3 bounty hunters with specialized equipment, including a combat servitor armed with a heavy bolter. They'd trapped the corridor with frag mines and positioned themselves in elevated firing positions with overlapping fields of fire. John noticed the mines from the disturbed dust patterns and the faint chemical signature his suit's sensors detected. He backtracked, found a maintenance shaft, and came at them from above through the ceiling panels. The servitor died first, 3 carefully placed shots to its cortex housing, dropping it before its heavy bolter could turn the corridor into a killing zone. The bounty hunters died next, picking them off with the precision of someone who'd done rooftop shooting in another life, another age, when targets had been flesh rather than augmented killers in the grim darkness of the far future. 21 rounds remaining. The third attempt came from a solo operator, a young woman with an Arbit's badge on her belt and the lean, hungry look of someone trying to make a name. She'd tracked him through 3 sectors, following movement patterns and ambush sites, reading his tactics the way someone trained in law enforcement would. She almost got him. Would have, if John hadn't seen the reflection of her sniper scope in a puddle of sump water half a second before she fired. He could accept, walk into what was essentially a suicide mission against supernatural threats he didn't fully understand. Or he could negotiate better terms, use this moment of perceived value to extract more advantage from the high table. I want 3 things beyond just lifting the excommunicado, John said. First, full access to continental resources for the mission. Weapons, intelligence, support if things go catastrophically wrong. Second, a permanent marker that prevents future excommunicado declarations without unanimous high-table vote. Third, information about the cryo ship that brought me to this Millennium. If any records exist, I want them found. Katerin studied him with those augmetic eyes, processing calculations that went beyond simple tactical assessment. The first 2 are negotiable. The third, she paused, finding records from 17,000 years ago, especially from the Age of Strife. That's nearly impossible, but I'll authorize the broker to search the archives. If anything exists, she'll find it. She extended her hand across the table. Do we have an agreement? John looked at her hand, at the data slate with its cult imagery, at the servo skull bobbing nervously at his shoulder. This was a trap. He could see that clearly. The high table was betting he'd either succeed in killing their chaos cult problem or die trying, and either outcome served their interests. But it was also an opportunity, a chance to move from hunted to negotiated status, to buy time and resources for whatever came next. He'd survived 17,000 years of cryo-sleep and 3 days of being excommunicado. A chaos cult, however dangerous, was just another problem to solve with the right preparation and tactics. He took her hand. We have an agreement. Katerin smiled, but there was no warmth in it, just professional acknowledgement of a contract accepted. Good. The broker will provide detailed intelligence at the Continental. I suggest you rest and prepare. The cult conducts their major ritual in 72 hours, and that's when the Crimson Priestess will be most vulnerable. Hit them during the ceremony when their attention is focused on whatever warp-spawned horror they're summoning. She stood, their business concluded with the efficiency of experienced criminals who understood that negotiations were just violence postponed. One more thing, John. If you encounter actual demons, entities fully manifested from the warp, don't try to fight them. Run. Even the Adeptus Astartes struggle against true demons, and you're just a very skilled human with Dark Age weapons. Heroism against chaos gets you possessed or dead, and we need you functional, not martyred. John nodded acknowledgement and watched her disappear into the transit station's shadows, leaving him alone with the servo skull and a contract that would either restore his status or end his improbable survival in the grim darkness of the far future. The servo skull chirped inquiry, asking in its limited way if they were really going to do this. We're going to prepare, John told it. Going to learn everything possible about chaos cults and warp corruption. Going to arm ourselves properly and plan 3 different extraction routes. He stood and started walking toward the Continental, where the broker would be waiting with intelligence and equipment. And then we're going to kill a Crimson Priestess and whatever horrors she's summoning, because that's what professionals do. They complete the contract, no matter what millennium they're working in. The 41st millennium had taught John many things in his brief time awake, but it was about to learn something from Old Terra in return, that the most dangerous weapon wasn't faith or corruption or supernatural power. It was a professional killer who'd signed a contract and intended to fulfill it. The Continental's armory had been expanded since John's last visit. The broker stood among weapon racks that would have made a guard armory jealous, her augmetic eyes glowing as she accessed data streams about chaos cult operations that most Imperial citizens would be executed for possessing. 72 hours until the ritual, she said, without preamble as John entered. That gives us 3 days to turn you from a very efficient killer into someone who can survive warp-contaminated environments without losing your mind or soul. She gestured at a table covered in equipment. This is going to be educational for both of us. I've never prepared someone from the pre-Imperium era for chaos cult infiltration before. The servo skull settled onto a perch near the table, its sensors analyzing the equipment with what John had started recognizing as mechanical curiosity. The broker began with the basics. Chaos corruption operates on multiple levels: physical, mutations, diseases, bodily transformation; mental, madness, obsession, loss of self; spiritual, possession, soul consumption, demonic influence. The Slaneshi cult you're targeting specializes in the mental and spiritual categories. They corrupt through pleasure, through promises of sensation beyond what baseline human neurology can process. She pulled up hololithic displays showing cult ceremonies, writhing figures, impossible geometries, colors that seemed to exist in spectra human eyes shouldn't perceive. John felt his vision blur slightly looking at them, some instinctive reaction warning him that these images carried contamination. Your advantage, the broker continued, is that you lack the Imperium's religious indoctrination. Most people in the 41st millennium have been taught from birth that chaos is the ultimate evil, that even thinking about it invites corruption. That fear creates vulnerability. The cultists use it against you, turn your terror into a weapon. But you, she studied him carefully, you don't have that fear. You see chaos as just another threat category. That psychological difference might buy you critical seconds when corruption attempts begin. Might? Chaos doesn't follow predictable patterns, John. It's the warp, the realm of souls and nightmares and things that exist outside rational physics. I can give you tools and techniques, but ultimately, survival comes down to will. If you want to resist corruption badly enough, if you maintain focus on your objective rather than letting the cult's promises seduce you, you have a chance. She handed him a pendant on a chain, a small aquila rendered in silver, with inscriptions in High Gothic covering its surface. Blessed by an ecclesiarchy priest who doesn't ask questions about where his funding comes from. It won't stop demonic possession, but it provides minor protection against warp influence. Wear it. John put the pendant on, feeling slightly ridiculous carrying a religious symbol from a faith that hadn't existed in his own time. But if it helped, pragmatism trumped philosophical consistency. The broker continued her instruction, covering everything from recognizing possession symptoms to emergency purification rituals that might slow corruption if he got contaminated. She provided weapons, a flamer that used promethium to burn away warp-tainted flesh, bolt pistol loaded with sanctified ammunition, combat knife that had been quenched in holy water and inscribed with protective prayers. The flamer is critical, she emphasized. Chaos flesh regenerates, mutates, refuses to die through conventional means. Fire purifies. If you encounter something that doesn't die when shot, burn it. 3 hours of instruction later, John had a working understanding of chaos cult operations that would have gotten most Imperial citizens investigated by the Inquisition. The broker provided maps of the deep underhive where the cult operated, guard rotations based on surveillance, and intelligence about the Crimson Priestess herself. Her real name was Silara Vex, the broker said. Hadrian's sister, though he doesn't advertise that relationship. She was a mid-hive merchant before chaos found her, or she found it. Smart, charismatic, ambitious. The kind of person who looks at the Imperium's brutal hierarchy and decides there must be a better path, even if that path leads straight into the warp's embrace. John processed this connection. Does Hadrian know I'm going after his sister? He knows. He's the one who provided some of this intelligence. The broker's expression was unreadable. Whatever Silara became, it's not his sister anymore. He understands that. Chaos doesn't corrupt people. It replaces them with something wearing their face and memories but fundamentally alien. If you kill the Crimson Priestess, you'll be ending what's already dead and preventing whatever demon she's channeling from fully manifesting. She handed John one final piece of equipment, a small vial of clear liquid, amasec laced with a mild sedative. If you feel corruption taking hold, if the cult's promises start making sense, if you look at the warp and feel drawn to it, drink this. It'll knock you unconscious for approximately 30 minutes. Better to wake up in a cult cell with a chance to escape than to willingly embrace damnation. Comforting, John said dryly. Chaos isn't comforting. It's the antithesis of everything that makes the Imperium function, as brutal and backwards as the Imperium is. The cult you're infiltrating has killed and corrupted dozens. They'll try to do the same to you through seduction, through promises of power and pleasure, through showing you glimpses of what the warp can offer. Your job is to resist long enough to put a bullet in the Crimson Priestess and destroy their ritual focus. John spent the next 48 hours in final preparation. He studied the cult imagery until he could recognize their symbols instantly, practiced with the flamer until its weight and operation became automatic, reviewed the maps until he could navigate the deep underhive's passages in complete darkness. The servo skull stayed with him throughout, its sensors absorbing tactical data and its machine spirit providing what John had started thinking of as moral support. On the third day, as the hive's chronometers marked 18 hours until the ritual, John equipped himself with the full loadout: flamer, bolt pistol, combat knife, sanctified ammunition, holy pendant, emergency sedative. The tactical suit had been reinforced with armored panels. His face was covered with a rebreather that would filter both toxins and warp contamination to minimal degrees. The broker met him at the Continental's exit. The cult expects approximately 40 worshippers at tonight's ceremony. The Crimson Priestess will conduct the ritual from a central altar in the old processing chamber. Intelligence suggests she's attempting to summon a keeper of secrets, a greater demon of Slanesh. If she succeeds, we're all dead. The entire sector, possibly the entire hive, becomes a demonic incursion site that would require Astartes' intervention. Then I won't let her succeed. Confidence is good. Arrogance gets you killed. She handed him a final data slate. This contains everything we know about the ritual: timing, participants, focus points. The Crimson Priestess will be most vulnerable during the summoning's peak, when her concentration is divided between maintaining the ceremony and channeling warp energy. That's your window. Hit her then, and you might disrupt everything before the daemon fully manifests. John took the data slate and nodded acknowledgement. Words felt insufficient for what he was about to attempt, walking into a chaos cult stronghold, alone, except for a servo-skull companion, to kill a warp-touched priestess and prevent demonic manifestation. In his old life, this would have been considered suicide. In the 41st millennium, it was apparently just another Tuesday in the underhive. The servo-skull chirped from his shoulder, its binary taking on an almost encouraging tone. "I know," John told it. "We've survived worse. We survived cryosleep, survived the underhive, survived excommunicado. What's one chaos cult compared to 17,000 years of time displacement?" The broker smiled slightly. "That's the spirit. Go kill a Crimson Priestess, John from Old Terra, and if you do encounter a fully manifested demon, remember my advice: run. Some threats can't be killed, only survived long enough to become someone else's problem." John walked out of the Continental into the underhive's perpetual twilight. The deep levels awaited, places where the Emperor's light had never reached, where chaos could flourish in darkness that predated the Imperium itself. He descended through passages that grew progressively more contaminated with warp influence, where the walls seemed to breathe and the air tasted of colors that shouldn't exist. The servo-skull's sensors registered escalating corruption levels, but John pushed forward with the determination of someone who'd signed a contract and intended to complete it. Somewhere ahead, in a processing chamber buried beneath kilometers of industrial waste and human suffering, a cult prepared to summon something from beyond reality. And walking toward them through darkness came a man from an age before the Emperor, carrying weapons blessed by faith he didn't share, driven by professional standards that transcended millennium and corruption. The ritual was about to begin, and with it, the most dangerous contract John had ever accepted. Still with us in the darkness, the tension builds as Old Terra training meets warp corruption. Hit that like and subscribe, because what happens next will determine if ancient skills can triumph over demonic nightmares. The deep underhive was a different kind of darkness than John had encountered before. This wasn't just the absence of light, it was the presence of something else, something that pressed against consciousness and whispered promises in languages that predated human speech. The walls wept condensation that shimmered with colors his eyes couldn't properly process, and the air carried scents that shifted between sickeningly sweet and acidically acrid without transition. The servo-skull's sensors were going haywire, its machine spirit struggling to interpret readings that violated basic physics. But it stayed at John's shoulder, loyal despite the corruption saturating the environment. John checked his weapons one final time. Flamer loaded with pressurized promethium, bolt pistol with sanctified rounds, combat knife blessed by prayers he didn't understand but trusted through necessity. The Aquila pendant hung against his chest, and he could swear it felt warm, either genuine divine protection or psychosomatic comfort. Either way, he'd take it. The cult's stronghold occupied what had once been a water reclamation facility, its processing chambers converted into temples of excess that would have the ecclesiarchy screaming for exterminatus. John approached through maintenance passages, avoiding the main entrance where cultist guards stood watch with weapons and, more disturbingly, with mutations that marked them as already touched by the warp. One guard had eyes covering half his face, not augmetic replacements, but actual organic eyes that had sprouted like tumors. Another's hands had split into too many fingers, each one ending in something between a nail and a claw. They wore robes of silk that seemed to move independently of air currents, and their weapons bore decorations that hurt to look at directly. John killed them both with the combat knife, quick strikes from behind that severed spinal columns before they could alert others. The bodies twitched as he dragged them into shadows, their mutations continuing to spread, even in death, until he doused them with promethium and set them burning. The flames consumed the warp-tainted flesh with unnatural eagerness, as if fire itself was eager to purge the corruption. Inside the facility, the corruption intensified. The walls were covered in murals that depicted acts ranging from artistic to obscene, often simultaneously. Music drifted through corridors, not any instrument John recognized, but rather sounds that seemed to bypass his ears entirely and stimulate pleasure centers directly in his brain. He felt his focus wavering, felt the music promising release from the tension of constant survival. He bit down hard on his tongue, using pain to anchor himself to reality. The copper taste of blood was grounding, familiar, human. The music faded to background noise as he concentrated on his mission parameters rather than the sensations assaulting his nervous system. The servo skull chirped urgent warning, multiple contacts ahead, clustered in what the facility maps indicated was the main processing chamber, the ritual space. John found an elevated observation platform overlooking the chamber, a maintenance catwalk that had been used by pre-corruption facility workers to monitor equipment. From here, he could see the entire ceremony layout without exposing himself to immediate detection. 47 cultists filled the chamber floor, arranged in concentric circles around a central altar that pulsed with light that existed somewhere between purple and a color that had no name. They wore robes ranging from simple cloth to elaborate garments that seemed woven from living shadow. Some bore mutations, extra limbs, shifting facial features, skin that rippled with patterns that moved independently. Others appeared human still, though their eyes held the particular emptiness of people who'd traded sanity for sensation. At the chamber's center, on an altar constructed from materials that John couldn't identify and wasn't sure he wanted to, stood the Crimson Priestess. Silara Vex had been beautiful once, according to the intelligence files. Now she was something beyond beauty, something that triggered aesthetic responses in ways that made John's tactical assessment capabilities struggle to function. Her face shifted constantly, sometimes human, sometimes something else, always captivating in ways that made looking away feel like loss. Her robes were the color of bruises and fresh blood, and they moved with motions that suggested there were more limbs beneath them than human anatomy should possess. She spoke in a voice that echoed with harmonics that shouldn't exist in real space, calling to entities beyond the veil, promising flesh and souls and sensations eternal. The cultists responded in chant, not low Gothic or high Gothic, but something older, something that made John's teeth ache and his vision blur. The ritual was already underway. The air above the altar was beginning to tear, reality splitting like overworked fabric to reveal something beneath. Through that tear, John could see. He looked away immediately, every survival instinct screaming that some things shouldn't be perceived. His hand went to the Aquila pendant, and whether through genuine divine protection or simple psychological anchoring, the urge to look again faded slightly. The servo skull chirped frantic warning. The warp tear was expanding, and through it, something was beginning to manifest. Something vast and terrible and seductive in ways that made baseline human consciousness struggle to maintain coherence. John had approximately 90 seconds before full demonic manifestation, according to the broker's intelligence. 90 seconds to kill the Crimson Priestess, disrupt the ritual, and prevent the Keeper of Secrets from entering real space. He raised the bolt pistol, lined up the shot on Solara Vex's center mass, compensated for distance and the strange way light bent around her, and squeezed the trigger. The sanctified bolt round screamed across the chamber and struck the Crimson Priestess in the chest with enough force to pulp a normal human. She staggered, the chant faltering, and for a moment John thought it would be that simple. Then she laughed. The wound in her chest sealed itself with warp speed regeneration, flesh flowing like water to repair damage that should have been terminal. She turned to look directly at the catwalk where John was positioned, her eyes meeting his across 100 meters of corrupted space, and smiled with too many teeth. "Old Terra," she said, her voice carrying clearly despite the impossible acoustics. "I can taste your soul's vintage, pre-unity, pre-Imperium, from an age when humanity hadn't yet learned to properly worship or properly despair. How delicious." The cultists were moving now, some breaking from the circle to pursue him, others maintaining the chant to keep the ritual functioning despite the disruption. John fired 3 more bolt rounds at the Crimson Priestess, each one hitting center mass, each one healing almost instantly as warp energy poured through the tear and into her flesh. Conventional weapons weren't going to work. She was too far gone into corruption, too invested with demonic power, too connected to whatever was trying to manifest through the ritual. John holstered the bolt pistol and grabbed the flamer. If sanctified bullets wouldn't work, maybe purifying fire would. He descended from the catwalk, moving through cultists who tried to stop him with grasping hands and weapons that screamed as they cut air. He killed 6 of them in close-quarters combat, each death precise and efficient, each corpse doused with promethium and set burning to prevent warp resurrection. The Crimson Priestess was still chanting, still channeling, and the tear, in reality, had grown to the size of a doorway. Through it, John could see hints of the thing trying to force its way through, something vast and impossible that wore beauty like a weapon and promised pleasures that would shatter sanity like glass. He reached the altar's base and pulled the flamer's trigger. Blessed promethium engulfed the Crimson Priestess in cleansing fire. She screamed, not in pain, but in something approaching ecstasy, as the flames consumed her corrupted flesh. The cultists' chanting reached a crescendo, trying to complete the summoning even as their priestess burned. But fire was older than chaos, older than the warp, older than the gods themselves. Fire was humanity's first weapon and last defense, and when wielded with purpose, it could cleanse even demonic taint. The Crimson Priestess collapsed into ash and ember, her connection to the warp severed by thermal purification. The tear in reality wavered, unstable without her channeling to anchor it. The thing beyond, the Keeper of Secrets trying to manifest, screamed with a sound that made the chamber's walls crack and John's ears bleed. Then the tear collapsed, reality reasserting itself with a thunderclap that knocked every cultist to the ground and shattered every light source in the facility. In the absolute darkness that followed, John activated the servo skull's eye lenses and began his extraction. The cultists were in chaos, some fleeing, some weeping, some tearing at their own flesh as the sudden absence of warp connection left them psychologically shattered. He moved through them like a ghost, killing only those who tried to stop him, focused on reaching the exit before reinforcements arrived, or something worse manifested from the ritual's disrupted energies. He emerged into the underhive's normal darkness 90 minutes later, covered in ash and blood and chemical residue from the flamer. The servo skull bobbed exhaustedly at his shoulder, its sensors damaged but functional, its machine spirit having witnessed horrors that no Dark Age technology was designed to process. Behind them, in the depths where the cult had operated, fires still burned, cleansing flames consuming evidence of corruption and preventing the cult from regrouping. The Crimson Priestess was dead. The ritual was disrupted. The demon had been denied manifestation. The contract was complete. John activated his Vox bead, connecting to the frequency the broker had provided. It's done. The priestess is dead. The cult is broken. Recommend immediate purge teams to ensure no survivors attempt to rebuild. The broker's voice came through after a moment. Confirmed. The high table is satisfied. Your excommunicado status is lifted. Your continental marker restored. Welcome back to neutral ground, John from Old Terra. John ended the connection and started the long climb back to the mid-hive, to relative safety, to something approaching the civilization that the 41st millennium called normal. His body ached from exertion and minor wounds. His mind felt stretched thin from exposure to warp corruption. But he was alive, functional, and still fundamentally himself. The servo skull chirped something that might have been relief or congratulation or simple exhaustion. We survived, John told it. Again, that seems to be our specialty, surviving things that should kill us. The 41st millennium had thrown chaos at him, literal and metaphorical, and he'd burned his way through it with Old Terra pragmatism and weapons blessed by a faith that wasn't his own. He'd learned something valuable, that some threats transcended tactical analysis and required something approaching spiritual resistance to overcome. But he'd also confirmed something he'd suspected, that fundamentally, across all the millennia and all the changes humanity had endured, professional standards still mattered. Complete the contract, fulfill the obligation, survive to take the next job. The Emperor might protect the faithful, but John from Old Terra protected himself through preparation, precision, and the willingness to burn anything that stood between him and mission completion. The Continental's halls felt different now that John was no longer excommunicado. Guards nodded acknowledgement rather than tracking him as a target. Criminal brokers paused their conversations as he passed, their expressions mixing respect with wariness. Word had spread through the underhive's networks with the speed that only legendary violence could generate. The Old Terra ghost had walked into a chaos cult stronghold and emerged victorious, carrying nothing but ash and the loyalty of a servo skull. The broker waited in her office, and for the first time since John had met her, she stood when he entered, a sign of respect in the underhive's rigid hierarchy. The high table has convened. They want to see you in person, not for judgment this time, but for acknowledgement. You've earned something rare in the criminal underworld, genuine respect backed by demonstrated capability. John settled into the chair across from her desk, feeling exhaustion settling into his bones now that the adrenaline was fading. The servo skull took its customary perch on his shoulder, its sensors still occasionally glitching from the warp exposure, but recovering steadily. What does the high table want now? To offer you permanent employment, not as a gang enforcer or common killer, but as what they're calling a continental operative, someone who handles problems too dangerous or too sensitive for normal criminal resources. Chaos cult disruptions, rival organization eliminations, situations where precision matters more than overwhelming force. She leaned forward. It's a position that comes with significant benefits: full continental protection, access to our entire resource network, and payment that would let you live comfortably in the mid-hive rather than surviving in the underhive's darkness. And the obligations? You take contracts when called. You operate under continental rules and authority. You become part of the organization rather than an independent operator. The broker's augmetic eyes studied him carefully. It's the difference between being hunted and being protected, between surviving alone and thriving with support. For most people, it would be an easy choice. John thought about the past week, waking from 17,000 years of cryo-sleep, surviving gang attacks, enduring excommunicado, burning a chaos priestess to ash in a ritual chamber. He'd gone from complete displacement to establishing himself in the 41st millennium's brutal hierarchy through nothing but skill and the willingness to apply violence when necessary. But accepting permanent employment meant becoming part of the system, losing the independence that had defined his entire professional existence across two very different eras of human history. "I need time to consider," John said finally. The broker nodded, unsurprised. "Take 48 hours. The High Table will meet you at the Cathedral of Redemption after that, regardless of your decision. If you accept, they formalize your position. If you refuse, you remain a continental marker holder with neutral status, not employed but not hunted either." She pulled a credit chit from her desk and slid it across to him. "Payment for the Chaos Cult contract. 50,000 throne gelt. Enough to establish yourself independently if that's the path you choose." John took the chit, feeling its weight. More money than he'd seen in this new life, enough to buy equipment, secure proper lodging, maybe even begin searching for answers about what had happened to his cryo ship and why he'd ended up in Hive Tertius specifically. "One more thing," the broker said, producing a data slate. "You asked about records from your cryo ship, about information from the Age of Strife. I've been searching the archives, every database the Continental has access to, every historical record that survived the millennia. I found something. Not much, but something." She activated the slate, and John leaned forward to read. The text was fragmentary, corrupted by time and data degradation, but certain words remained clear. Cryo transport vessel, colonial expedition, Mars orbit disruption, emergency jump, estimated missing, 17,000 years. "Your ship was part of a colonial mission during the late Dark Age of technology," the broker explained. "Something went wrong near Mars. The records suggest warp storm activity, or possibly proto-mechanicus sabotage. The ship initiated an emergency warp jump and was never seen again, until your cryopod crashed into Hive Tertius's foundations during the Age of Strife." She paused. "The rest of your crew is almost certainly dead, John. 17,000 years without maintenance would have killed everyone except whoever was in the most heavily shielded pods, and even then, the odds of survival were minimal." John absorbed this information, feeling something he hadn't allowed himself to feel since waking. Grief for a crew he couldn't remember clearly, for a mission that had failed catastrophically, for an entire civilization that had risen and fallen while he'd slept in frozen stasis. "Was I alone in the pod?" he asked quietly. The broker's expression softened slightly. "The records don't specify, but the pod that opened in the underhive was designed for single occupancy. If there were others, they're still buried somewhere in the hive's foundations, or they were destroyed during the millennia of construction and decay." The servo skull chirped something that sounded mournful, its machine spirit perhaps processing the tragedy of Old Terra's lost expedition through whatever remained of its human memory engrams. John stood, taking the data slate and the credit chit. "Thank you for searching, for finding what little exists. It's what the Continental does. We maintain records, preserve knowledge, remember things that the Imperium forgets or suppresses." The broker stood as well. "Whatever you decide about employment, John, you've earned your place in this era. You've proven that Old Terra's professionals could match anything the 41st Millennium produces. That's worth remembering." John left the Continental and walked through the underhive's corridors, the servo skull his constant companion. He passed gang members who gave him wide berth, criminals who nodded respect, and ordinary citizens who had no idea they were looking at someone from an age before the Emperor. The underhive had become familiar in a way he hadn't expected. Still brutal, still dangerous, but navigable now that he understood its rules and hierarchies. He found himself at the water reclamation facility where he'd killed Marek Cross, now abandoned after the gang lord's death. The fortress stood empty, a monument to the price of disrespect and the consequences of targeting someone carrying Old Terra markers. Inside, John climbed to the control center where Marek had held court. The throne was still there, empty now, waiting for whoever would be ambitious or foolish enough to claim it. John sat in it, not claiming authority, but simply resting, and thought about everything that had happened since waking from cryo-sleep. He'd survived the impossible, killed over 150 people, disrupted a chaos cult, earned respect from an organization that predated the Imperium itself. He'd gone from completely displaced to establishing himself in the 41st Millennium's criminal hierarchy in less than 2 weeks. The servo skull settled onto the throne's armrest, its eye lenses dimmed to minimal power, its presence a reminder that even in this grim darkness, companions could be found in unexpected forms. "What do you think?" John asked it. "Do we accept permanent employment, become part of their system, or do we stay independent, take contracts as they interest us, remain what we've always been, professionals who work for ourselves?" The servo skull chirped response that John had learned to interpret as thoughtful consideration. It didn't make decisions for him, but it offered perspective through its reactions, its machine spirit somehow maintaining personality despite being mechanical. John thought about the Continental's offer, about the security it represented versus the independence it would cost, about whether someone from Old Terra could truly fit into the 41st Millennium's brutal order, or whether he was always going to be a ghost from a better age, surviving but never belonging. He thought about the crew he'd lost, the mission that had failed, the civilization that had birthed him now dust and legend, about the fact that everything he'd known was gone, replaced by an Imperium that worshipped a man he'd never met and prosecuted endless war across a galaxy he barely understood. But he also thought about the servo skull at his shoulder, about Hadrian Vex providing weapons with professional courtesy, about the broker searching ancient archives for answers, about surviving excommunicado and proving that Old Terra techniques could match 41st Millennium brutality. Maybe belonging wasn't about fitting into someone else's system. Maybe it was about creating your own space within it, establishing your own rules while respecting the larger structure. The Continental's offer wasn't enslavement, it was partnership with an organization that valued professional standards and maintained traditions older than the Imperium itself. John stood from the throne, decision crystallizing with the certainty that had guided his actions across 17,000 years of separation. He would meet the high table, he would hear their formal offer, and he would accept it, not because he needed their protection, but because even in the grim darkness of the far future, professionals should work with professionals. The servo skull chirped approval, or perhaps just acknowledgement. "Come on," John told it. "We have 48 hours before the meeting. Let's find proper lodging, get real rest, and prepare for whatever comes next. Because I suspect the Continental's contracts are only going to get more interesting from here." They left the abandoned fortress and walked into the underhive's perpetual twilight. A man from Old Terra and his loyal servo skull companion, both of them survivors in an age that killed the weak and elevated the ruthless. The 41st Millennium had tested John in every way possible, through violence, through isolation, through supernatural corruption, through impossible odds. He'd passed every test by staying true to the professional standards that had defined him before cryo-sleep and sustained him after awakening. Now, standing at the edge of permanent employment with the criminal underworld's most ancient organization, he felt something he hadn't experienced since waking. Purpose. Not just survival, but actual direction. Not just existing in this new era, but becoming part of it while maintaining his own identity. The Emperor protected the faithful, the Continental protected its own, and John from Old Terra would protect himself through the same methods that had sustained professional killers across all of human history. Preparation, precision, and the absolute commitment to completing the contract, regardless of what horrors the galaxy threw at him. His story in the 41st Millennium was just beginning, and the Underhive's legends were only starting to understand what Old Terra had sent them through 17,000 years of cryo-sleep. 2 days later, John stood before the high table in the Cathedral of Redemption, dressed in a tactical suit that had been cleaned and repaired, carrying weapons that bore the Continental's blessing, with the servo skull at his shoulder like a badge of office from an age the Imperium had forgotten. Madame Throne rose from her seat, her massive augmented frame casting shadows across the defiled altar. "John of Old Terra, you have completed a contract that we believed would kill you. You disrupted a chaos cult that threatened our operations. You burned the Crimson Priestess to ash and prevented demonic manifestation in our territories." She paused, and something approaching approval crossed her features. "You have proven yourself worthy of permanent continental employment. Do you accept?" John looked at each member of the high table in turn, reading their expressions: respect from some, wariness from others, calculation from all. These were the underhive's masters, criminals who commanded armies and controlled economies that rivaled legitimate imperial commerce. Joining them meant becoming part of that machinery, but it also meant having resources, protection, and purpose in a millennium that had tried repeatedly to kill him. "I accept," John said simply, "on the condition that I maintain autonomy in contract selection and operational methodology. I work with the Continental, not for it." Madame Throne smiled, the expression genuine for the first time John had seen. "Agreed. You are now a Continental operative, with all rights, protections, and obligations that status entails." She gestured, and Katarin Vess stepped forward carrying a marker, not the ancient one John had carried from Old Terra, but a new one, freshly minted in silver, that caught the cathedral's dim light. "This marker represents the Continental's bond with you," Katarin said, placing it in John's hand. "It grants you sanctuary in any establishment we control, access to our resources, and the backing of 7 crime lords who rule the underhive, but it also binds you to our codes, honor contracts, respect neutral ground, and never betray the organization. Break these rules, and the consequences will make excommunicado look merciful." John closed his hand around the marker, feeling its weight, lighter than the ancient one, but carrying equal significance. "Understood." The ceremony concluded with unexpected formality, each high table member acknowledging him individually, speaking his name and title into the cathedral's acoustics like they were binding it into reality through repetition. When it ended, John was no longer just a survivor or a ghost from Old Terra. He was something with definition in the 41st Millennium's hierarchy, something that belonged despite coming from an age 17,000 years dead. The servo skull chirped approval as they left the cathedral, and John could swear the machine spirit's binary contained something approaching pride. The weeks that followed brought contracts, not the desperate survival violence of his first days awake, but professional operations where his Old Terra techniques found perfect application. He eliminated a rogue tech priest who'd been stealing from Continental smuggling operations, infiltrated a rival gang's fortress, and extracted intelligence that prevented open war between underhive factions. Even trained some of the Continental's more promising enforcers in close-quarters combat, teaching techniques from an era when killing had been refined to art rather than merely executed with brutality. Between contracts, he established a life of sorts, a small but secure apartment in the mid-hive where the servo skull could charge and he could rest without expecting midnight assassination attempts. A relationship with Hadrian Vex that had evolved from business transaction to something approaching mutual respect between professionals. Regular meetings with the broker who continued searching for fragments of information about his lost cryo ship and the crew he'd never see again. The 41st Millennium was still brutal, still horrifying, still a galaxy where 1,000,000 souls screamed in agony every second, and that was considered a quiet day. But within that darkness, John had carved out something approaching purpose. He was a Continental operative, a professional killer operating under ancient codes in humanity's darkest age, proving that even in the grim darkness of the far future, standards still mattered. One evening, sitting in his apartment while the servo skull bobbed contentedly near a charging station, John received a Vox transmission from the broker. Her voice carried unusual excitement. "I found something, another cryopod signature in the hive's deep foundations. The scan is 17,000 years old, but it might still be viable. It could be someone from your original crew." John felt his heart rate accelerate, the first genuine hope he'd experienced since awakening. "Coordinates? Sending now. But John, the pod is in territory controlled by something worse than gangs or cults. The scan shows it's near what the locals call the Screaming Depths, where sounds from the past echo endlessly, and things that shouldn't exist hunt in absolute darkness. Even the underhive's hardest criminals won't go there." John checked his weapons by instinct: the auto-pistol from Old Terra, the combat shotgun from Hadrian, the flamer that had burned a Chaos Priestess to ash. Tools of his trade across two different eras of human history, united by their single purpose: keeping him alive when the galaxy tried to kill him. "I'll need a team," he said, "and heavy equipment. If there's even a chance someone from my original crew survived, I'm going after them." "I suspected you'd say that. The Continental is already assembling resources. We protect our own, John, and apparently that includes other Old Terra ghosts who might still be sleeping in the depths." The broker paused. "This could be dangerous in ways that make the Chaos cult look simple. Are you certain?" John looked at the servo skull, which had stopped charging, to focus its eye lenses on him, with what might have been concern or curiosity, or simply acknowledgement that another impossible mission was about to begin. "I'm certain," John said. "In my profession, in my era, we never left crew behind. That standard doesn't change just because 17,000 years have passed. If someone from my original mission is still alive down there, I'm bringing them home. Or I'm dying in the attempt." "The Emperor protects," the broker said reflexively. "Maybe," John replied. "But Old Terra professionals protect each other. Some traditions are older than the Imperium, and some bonds are stronger than even time can break." He ended the transmission and began preparing for the expedition into the Screaming Depths, where the past and present collided in darkness absolute, where another cryopod waited with its impossible cargo of hope and memory. The servo skull chirped readiness, its machine spirit having accompanied him through every danger since awakening, proving that loyalty transcended flesh and that companions could be found in the strangest forms. John from Old Terra, survivor, professional, continental operative, and the last remnant of an age before the Emperor, loaded his weapons and prepared to descend once more into the hive's deepest levels. Not for a contract this time, but for something more fundamental. The possibility that he wasn't alone, that someone else from his lost crew might have survived the impossible, that the bonds forged in humanity's golden age might still hold even in its darkest millennium. The 41st millennium had thrown everything at him: gang violence, excommunicado, chaos, corruption, and the brutal reality of endless war. He'd survived it all through Old Terra technique, through professional standards that transcended time, through the absolute refusal to stop fighting until either victory was achieved or death claimed him. Now, a new challenge waited in the Screaming Depths, and with it, the possibility that the story of the lost cryoship expedition wasn't quite finished. That somewhere in the darkness, another ghost from the Golden Age was waiting to wake, to learn that 17,000 years had passed, and to discover that at least one crew member had survived long enough to come looking. The Emperor's light might burn eternal across the galaxy, but sometimes the oldest lights, the lights of human loyalty, professional courtesy, and the bonds between crew members, burned just as bright. John had learned to survive in the 41st millennium by staying true to Old Terra's standards. Now, those standards demanded he venture into the deepest darkness on nothing but hope and the chance of finding someone who remembered the same lost world he did. He stood at his apartment window, looking out across the hive's endless sprawl, and felt something he hadn't experienced since waking: genuine purpose beyond mere survival. The Continental had given him employment. The underhive had given him respect. But this mission, this desperate venture into the screaming depths, would give him something more valuable than either. It would give him the chance to be what he'd always been across 17,000 years of separation. A professional who honored his crew, completed his contracts, and never stopped fighting until the mission was finally, truly done. The servo skull settled onto his shoulder one final time, its eye lenses glowing steady in the darkness, and together they prepared to descend into the depths where the past waited to be discovered, and where the future would be written in blood, fire, and the unbreakable bonds of Old Terra professionalism. In the grim darkness of the far future, there was only war, but there was also loyalty, honor, and the eternal human drive to find meaning in chaos. John from Old Terra had found all three, and he would carry them into whatever horrors the screaming depths contained, because that's what professionals did. They finished the job, protected their crew, and honored the codes that made them more than just killers in the dark. The Emperor protects, the Continental endures, and sometimes, against all odds and across all the millennia, Old Terra's finest survived to remind the future that humanity's golden age produced something worth remembering. Professionals who never quit, never surrendered, and never left anyone behind. The Emperor protects. More stories await. Thank you for joining us in the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, where an ancient killer from Old Terra proved that some skills transcend time itself. If you enjoyed this tale of survival, professionalism, and the unbreakable bonds that define humanity's finest, smash that subscribe button and join us for more legends from the dark millennium. Comment below, what impossible mission should John face next? The underhive holds countless horrors, and our Continental operative is just getting started. For the Emperor, for the Continental, for Old Terra's eternal standards. Until next time, may your aim be true and your contracts always complete.